it's incredible having you here today. We've thought about this for a long time, and it's good to have you in the seat and having this conversation. Just real quick, here today with Mr. Joe Rovnak, and this is a gentleman that I have tremendous respect for. And in my own journey and in my own struggle, I found myself not talking to him for almost 12 years because I myself was shamed of the person who I became. And so someone who I looked up to so much, I was scared to reach out because I didn't want him to see me for what I had become. And then it happened to be we were in advocacy in Washington, D.C., and I was literally standing right in front of the White House, probably 200 yards from the White House. And I thought of First Sergeant Joe Rovnak. And so I called Joe and I said, "Joe, how you doing, buddy?" And he said, "Not good." And that was the beginning of an incredible journey that we have embarked upon. And
when I said not good, I was laying on a physical therapy table with needles in my neck and my shoulders, trying to find a little bit of relief to get me down to about a 4. And I was done.
And talk to me about where was that pain?
The pain is in the cervical spine, it's mid-back, and it's lumbar, but this particular time frame was the neck, and it's multiple discs that have degeneration that had not really bothered me until it got to a point where everything locked up, and that was all the issues that I was dealing with. I mean, just a fraction more pressure, and it just sent all the nerves, arms were numb, tingling, locked up, couldn't turn my head. It was and that was on top of everything else.
Yeah.
So that was the icing, right?
From a non-veteran perspective here, what is the source of all that pain? Is it?
So it's the wear and tear on the spine from hiking, hauling all those loads, all those times when it was, this hurts, but I cannot stop. I can't put this down. I have to keep going, one more mile, and you just push through the pain, no matter whether you got an 81 tube on your neck to include your pack, to include another pack from a guy that you're carrying because he broke his foot or fell out or whatever. And it was just all those years. Typically, when you feel pain, you stop because that hurts.
Let's talk about all those years, right? Let's talk about the baseline of how you got to this point, and we reconnected in that conversation. So let's start with Mr. Joe Rovnak. Where are you from, buddy?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I called home. Just not in the city, out in the country, north of Pittsburgh.
Steelers fan?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Penguins, yeah.
Talk to me about your military experience.
So prior to that, I was an artist. I was going to be an artist. And Mom passed away when I was 9 years old, died on my birthday. And I always convinced myself that was a gift because she was in pain. She had leukemia, cancer. And I thought, wow, how special, for that to be my day. But I think always from that point on, I always saw it as a day of mourning and remembrance, and not a day that I should be happy and celebrating my life.
How old were you?
I was 9.
9 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and my dad raised me, and my brother and sister, and he was tough. He was a former Marine as well, and he was a tough guy, and I was a mama's boy, so that left me very alone. I felt like, oh wow, but I managed, and then in 1986 graduated high school. And goofed off for the summer, and then decided I was going to join the Marine Corps to get money for the GI Bill to go to art school. And I was an artist. I still am. I still paint. I still do things like that. And my dad did not think joining the Marine Corps was the right thing to do. The only reason why I joined the Marine Corps, because I I'll write a D plus high school graduation certificate. I mean, and that's the extent of my education. I was not a good student.
So your dad was a Marine, and he thought that it was not a good idea for you to join the Marine Corps.
Correct.
Why?
Because I was an emotional person. I always was. He said, you feel, you cry at the drink. He can make me cry so easily. I felt that easily. And he just thought I was too sensitive. I was too sensitive.
So it wasn't about necessarily his experience. He just thought that you weren't fit for it.
Right.
Was that a motivator for you to kind of prove him wrong, or?
You nailed it. Because of my grades, I didn't think I would really qualify for much else. I ended up scoring so high on the ASVAB that I could have joined any service and actually done almost anything in any service. I was only going to join the Marine Corps because I knew in my father's eyes anything less than the Marine Corps, I would never measure up. It just would not measure up. Well, you're not a Marine, you weren't a Marine. And my brother had joined the Marine Corps as well. He was actually a high school dropout. He was one of the last people that was able to join the Marine Corps without a high school diploma, and ended up retiring from the Marine Corps with a master's degree in computer science.
Wow.
Yeah.
Older brother?
Super smart guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really smart guy. So, and then I told the recruiters, I'm like, you can do anything. I said, infantry. I want guaranteed infantry because my dad won't respect anything else. It has to be infantry.
Why is that?
Because of all his stories and everything he talked about, I thought he was infantry too. About 3 years into my tour to the Marine Corps, I found out he was an admin clerk.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, I was like, what? He's like, I was like, Dad. He's like, yeah, I was admin. I'm like, what?
For the viewers at home that have no idea what that means, like myself.
Infantry is the most physically hardest thing that that's where you're going to deal with the abuse and all that.
But where's the admin perspective come from?
But everything else in the Marine Corps is support, right? The infantry, the Victor units, the special operation capable units, the infantry ground combat elements, that is the main effort of the Marine Corps, and everything in it is support. And so that's where I was going into the infantry. That was initially artillery, and I'm like, this is not close enough. We're actually supporting the infantry. I wanted to be the guy out there in the front with the guys on the ground at those friction points. And it's so funny that you pushed in because of your father, and with the perspective, I'm going infantry because your father wouldn't allow for anything else. You felt that from him because he knew that. Right?
Right.
That is what the Marine Corps does, and everybody in the Marine Corps understands that. That doesn't mean we're any better.
Right.
It's just that role, and every other role is in support of this role.
Yes.
That is incredible, man, that you found out that he was not the main effort, but he put so much pressure on you didn't feel like you could be that person. And I say that because Mr. Joe Rovnak is probably one of the best Marines that I've ever met in my life, and I think anybody who has ever crossed paths with him is going to say the same thing. It's incredible. He walked, and this is something I just shared with a group over the weekend. This is a gentleman where the kings gravitated to him, and I'm not talking about kings. When I say kings, I'm talking about the Joint Chiefs, right? Like a General Pace, members like that. They were like, this is the epitome of an enlisted Marine, right? 2 tours as a drill instructor, 4 theaters of war, 30 years of service between the Marine Corps and the Defense Intelligence Agency. Yeah, there's a reason you had pain in your back, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I intimately remember people saying, because I always pushed. I always knew that somewhere on the other side of the world, there's somebody that's training just a little bit harder. To be a little bit faster, to have a little bit better aim for the sole purpose of killing me one day. And I was not going to be, I would always be the victor. And that's how I trained, and I pushed hard. And people told me, you're going to pay for that one day. That's going to catch up to you. Like, well, that day's not today.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I pushed and I pushed.
However we thought it was.
Yeah, I don't regret it because I was that Marine.
Yeah.
I was faster. I was.
Yeah.
had more. I still a great shot. I had incredible accuracy.
Yeah.
And every time that I focused in, just zeroed in on that target, and did that slow, steady squeeze, I always envisioned somebody on the other side doing the same thing.
Are you a lefty?
No.
Man,
that hit was free.
That's impressive. You're right. Talk to me about your, you joined the military. Other than your father, why did you join?
And it was, okay, I convinced myself it was for art school. Money for art school, the GI Bill, which I could have gotten from any other service.
Yeah.
I always knew I was Superman. I always knew that I was a protector. I always knew instinctively that I was a warrior, an elite warrior, that it was unique. And I was a long-haired hippie in high school.
Yeah.
You know, can't we all just hug? Let's just hug. Let's bring it in. But I also was suspended several times in high school for getting into fights. And it wasn't because I had an altercation with someone. One time a kid pushed a girl down and felled up her chest. And I got wind of it.
Found him. He was going to pay.
He did.
Yeah.
You know, just slugged it out a little
Absolutely.
bit. Made sure it would never happen again. Got called to the office. And they said, don't tell anybody, but we really don't want to suspend you. But we have to. Go home and enjoy your 5 days off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. And they were like, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one was my sister had cancer. I was 16, she was 13. And
your sister had cancer
at
13?
Yeah, Hodgkin's. Yep. And I was the one that took her to her chemo and radiation therapies down into Pittsburgh. And I would get out of school, take her to Pittsburgh, get her treatments. I always kept bags in the back seat, so 'cause she would get sick.
Wow.
And then take her home, and then I would go to work. I had a night job, and then I'd work till 10, and then get home and get up and go to school and do it again.
Wow.
How? I was about 16 at the
How
time.
is she?
Good.
She's good.
Yeah. It was it's Hodgkin's, but it was the curable kind.
Yeah.
And she survived the chemo radiation, and I mean, she has, we all have our physical things from it. There's effects when you receive that type of treatment.
Yeah.
But she's
Probably a lot of neuropathy.
Yep, cured of cancer though.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How old is she now?
She's 3 years junior to me. She's 51.
Good for her, man. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Talk to me about you enlisted, correct?
Yeah, I did. I joined and signed up, and I was scared. I really thought I kind of was in the wrong spot. In fact, at that time, we didn't allow gay people or homosexuals in the military, and I was in receiving, and receiving is easy. Now, I didn't know it then, but I was scared. I'm like, man, these people are mean. This is crazy. I made a big mistake here, and I was laying.
Yeah.
I remember laying in bed at night. They just turned the lights off, and I thought, I know. When everybody goes to sleep, I'll go and talk to the drill instructor, and I'll tell him I'm gay, and they'll just send me home. I'll go home, right? And the sound of those shower shoes shuffling across the floor. Somebody else was going up to talk to the drill instructor, and I was like, daggone it, now I gotta wait for him. And you hear, sir, request to speak. He's like, get in here, what do you want? And I hear him screaming, what? You're gay? Is that right? Let's get your dad on the phone, see what he thinks of it. I'm like, oh, I ain't gay no more. Yeah, there goes my idea. Thanks. They called my dad. That didn't happen at all.
Oh, man.
And then I went to boot camp, and we made it through the first couple of days, and then the senior drill instructor sent all the DIs home. I mean, the scarier ones. And it was a decompression thing that they do, because I know I was a drill instructor, and it was just to kind of turn it down a couple notches. And the senior had us coming up to the front of by the quarter deck to do pull-ups, practice pull-ups. And he was like, good job, get down, good job, next, get up here, next. And I was like, wow, he's telling people good job. That's positive feedback, right? So I get up there, and I boom, boom, and I pump him out. And he's like, great job, get out of here. And he told me I did a great job. I did a great job, and I didn't feel like I had heard that in a long time.
Wow.
And I turned to him and smiled. He blasted me. He crushed me. And I remember that was a defining moment when I said, whoop, nope, nobody will ever get me like that again. Stoic, war face, done. I will, no emotion here. And they made me a squad leader, and I ended up graduating meritorious private first class.
Nice, buddy.
I excelled.
Nice.
I excelled. After that,
what's after boot camp?
Where'd
you go?
Went on to the School of Infantry. They had, for some reason, they sent me out to the West Coast, and then they called up like 8 or 9 of us and said, get over here, you guys. And they said, look, you're the only knuckleheads that have a high GT score and a clean driving record. We got this new job in the Marine Corps called LAVs, light armored vehicles. But you have to volunteer for it. And I'm like, no. I learned not to volunteer. I learned in boot camp, do not volunteer for anything. And I'm like, and he's like, one of the guys said, well, what's the difference? He goes, here's the deal. You don't have to hike. You're going to ride in a vehicle.
Boom.
I was like, oh, yeah,
I'll go.
sign me up. I'm good, man. Put me in.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they had the light armor vehicle school had such a chip on their shoulder because they had vehicles. Like we hiked twice as hard, twice as long. I'm like, why aren't we taking the vehicles? We got those vehicles, don't we? Out of gas? What's going on? Can't we just ride in the vehicles? So I ended up doing that, and I got orders to the East Coast, Camp Lejune. They transitioned the light armored vehicle community into the light armor reconnaissance community, understanding that those vehicles are excellent for reconnaissance missions. Reconnaissance, security, and economy of forces operations that exploit the unit's mobility and firepower, like burn into my brain. And then they said, well, we got to have reconnaissance Marines. And my company commander calls us in, and they screen everybody's swim qualifications, and like, hey, you're an okay swimmer. You're going to Recon school tryouts this Saturday out at Onslow Beach. And I'm like, well, I'm not volunteering for this. And they're like, well, we didn't say you're volunteering. You're going to go to the tryouts.
Voluntold.
And my company commander, who held me in high regard, a great man, he said, you'll pass. And I'm like, oh, man, he put that on me. And I went out there, and it was just half a day of having to run with a 50-pound sandbag on your back in boots and utes through the sand on the beach, wind in your face for time, and then the obstacle course multiple times, and then they take you to the pool and try to drown you for about 3 or 4 hours, the brick hole and swim in and all that. And I was one of a few that passed.
For anyone who has run in boots, right, to put those boots in the sand is incredibly difficult.
It's so hard.
The sand and then the snow. If you're in Virginia, for the snow, but the sand is incredibly difficult in a 50-pound sandbag. That's
and it was in the old Alice pack with no frame, so that sandbag is bouncing on your back, leaving 2 big raw marks on your back from bouncing, and you're against the clock the entire time. It's for time. It was hard. Which the indoc was hard, and then I went to recon school times 10.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So you were able to go to recon school?
I did. I went
That's
to
awesome.
amphib recon course out at Little Creek, Virginia, and I did really well there. My instructor wanted me to go on to Force Recon. He said I was an excellent candidate for it. He says, we watch you guys the whole time, and he said, I'll sponsor you. He says, you'll get it. It's going to be about a year of schooling. We're going to take everything, and it's just going to be, you got Halo, Hey-Ho, Scuba, all this other stuff. But Panama was breaking out, and I was still in comms with my unit, and they were on strip alert. So Light Armor Recon unit was on air alert to fly to Panama. Because all the whole Noriega thing was going down. And I said, I'm not missing the show. This is it. This is the real thing. It's everything we trained for. So I said, would there be an opportunity when I come back to do that? And he goes, yeah, we'll leave the door open.
That's cool.
And then I went to Panama. We're doing jungle patrols. the Panamanian Defense Force. I was not there for Just Cause. I was there just prior to. We did Operation Nimrod Dancer and a few other things. We actually found routes from the west side to the east side of the canal, not using roads through the jungle, using trails. We did foot patrols at night, did LPOPs, listening and observation, listening posts, observation posts, where you're just hiding in the weeds of the jungle at 2 a.m., watching and listening. And we had people walk. This is probably my first oh crap moment. In the weeds, in the jungle, hot, sweating, bugs, centipedes. I mean, it's like sitting in a bed of mold. That's what Panama's like. And pitch black, triple canopy. Even night vision goggles aren't really working. You're not getting any light. And we hear voices coming up the trail. And I'm like, and we're not far off of the trail. And just as they're passing us, just abreast of us, our radio had not been turned down. It goes, uh-oh. And they all stopped. And I waited, and I said, this is it. This is it. And they talked a little bit, and then they just slowly moved off. They knew we were there.
They didn't want it.
No. And I'm not sure if they were farmers with shovels over their shoulder, or PDF with rifles over their shoulder. You just don't know, but that's that discipline. You got to know. You got to know what you're doing, and it was like, wow, that was my first moment. Did some mobile patrols and, pot shots and things like that, but nothing significant. And then, came back from Panama, and it was just a short while later, and I had gotten married after Panama, but it was a short while later, the Gulf War broke out, and I remember our battalion commander held a formation, and people were asking questions, and he said, how long are we going to be over there, sir? And he said, I'll give you a window, somewhere between 4 months and 4 years. Pack accordingly. And another kid said, he goes, sir, I get out of the Marine Corps this Friday. I've already turned in all my gear. He goes, let me reiterate, if you can hear my voice, you're going.
Ooh.
Go to supply, they have your gear.
Got him.
That's it. Stop loss. Stop loss it was already implemented. Nobody gets out. You're staying.
Wow.
And then we flew over there. We pulled the vehicles, the light armor vehicles, off of the maritime preposition ships, the MPS ships, wrapped in cosmoline, and got them to the range. We zeroed them, and company commander briefed us, and he says, we're the guys here. This is our domain. Our orders are proceed directly to the Kuwait border. We are the screen. And that's exactly what we did. We pushed right up to the berm immediately, and we were the eyes and ears. And I remember, I have a lot of memories. I'm trying not to take too much time.
No, you're good, buddy.
We sat out there and rotted for a little while, and it was just MREs and water, and you're on water rations. There's no laundry. There's no nothing like that, and all you're eating is MREs. And, you can only... There's no bathroom, right? So everybody's digging and doing their thing and covering it up, and there's flies all through, the nasty swarms of flies. And then the flies go to where the wind has blown the sand, and then they're on your food in your mouth, and half the unit has dysentery now. So the holes are just multiplying as we go. And then we got a call that we had to retrograde. There was going to be a relief in place. A unit was going to watch our positions while we retrograded back. And the Army had this really neat camp set up, and they had used these hot water generators with pipes spraying out hot water. We were getting showers.
That's awesome.
And I'm in line with my towel and my bar of soap and my little shower shoes, because you have to pack those every time, your little shower shoes, and they're all broken and held together with duct tape. And I get in the shower, and we're all right next, but it doesn't matter. We don't care. We're brothers, whatever. Showering up. And when I walked past the line, getting ready to go in, I was like, oh my God, you guys stink. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that was me. That was me too. Yeah. It smelled like ammonia. Yeah. That's how rotten we were. I remember, pulling up my underwear one time, and it just disintegrated in my hand. And I'm like, okay, there goes the whole underwear thing. We're not wearing that anymore.
Yeah.
And then they cooked a meal for us, and I always thought this was fake, but it wasn't. They cooked for us, and I'd already sent my guys out on a recon, and they were stealing cans of peanut butter and jelly and pita bread and stuff like that from behind the. Look, they were like, "Oh, Corporal, look what we got." I'm like, "Yeah, good job." And gear adrift is a gift, right? So they didn't need it.
Yeah.
And
they didn't need it. Can you tell me more about that, Joe?
what's that?
They didn't need it. What happened to it?
Oh,
That's what you hear that quite often.
I mean, what's the how long?
They didn't need it.
How long do you have to wait
like a
before
door
you can't
to a
be held
Humvee.
responsible?
Yeah, it's fine. Unnecessary.
Yeah, so then the company commander called us over, and we had our orders, and he said, it's going down. We're going into Kuwait 3 days early. We'll be the only ones in Kuwait. Our job is we were basically doing a deception operation. Our job was to go into Kuwait and be visible and find the enemy and make sure that they find us, and we will engage and we will draw. Basically, they will turn and focus on us so that the engineers could blow a hole through the minefields, and then we could push through. And there was multiple layers of how they were going to accomplish that, but our job was to be visible. And this is like, ooh,
Yeah.
oh, this is, I mean, it was real before, but it's real now. Like, we're going to be all alone in there. And then, and then my guys come over with this grin on their face, like, okay, what have you guys gotten into now? And now you're not going to believe this. There's a rumor that in war, and there's evidence of it too, that they really try to give the guys the best possible meal that they can before they go in, because it could be their last good meal for a while, or it could be their last meal.
Yeah.
And these guys brought trays over, steak and eggs.
Nice.
And I went, oh, wow. Steak and eggs. Okay. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good, but it tasted
Yeah.
the bitterness of, this is my last meal.
Yeah. So we all know Kuwait was liberated. Talk to me about what comes after Kuwait in your experience.
Just came back from the Gulf War, and actually 3 days. It was right about that time. Maybe we got mail right about that time too. I got a Red Cross message that said, "Call your wife." There's no cell phones in the desert.
Yeah.
There was really no cell phones then too.
Yeah.
And luckily, my company commander, I was his gunner because I was the top gun in the company, and I sat right next to him in that gun turret. Dennis Green.
Dennis Green.
An amazing man, an amazing friend to this day. He said, "Hey, buddy." He called me Ricky because I went to Recon school, so he called me Ricky Recon. He said, "Hey, Ricky." He said, "Why didn't you tell me your wife was pregnant?" That's what the Red Cross message was about.
Wow.
My wife got pregnant about 2 weeks before I left.
Is that Danny?
That's how you found out?
My son, Chris.
Son's
Yeah.
oldest.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember screaming in the desert, "I'm going to be a father." And then I wrote a really, really long letter, and I mailed it saying, "Don't open this unless
Yeah.
I'm not coming back." Of course, my wife opened it right away and read it, so, but my son has it to this day.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so then, we went through that. I came back. Let's see. I was meritoriously promoted to sergeant. And then, again, it was Dennis Green who said, "Hey, you're an even better swimmer now. We got this new swim program called Marine Combat Instructor of Water Survival." And I'm like, "Oh, I've heard about that. No, that's he's like, "You're going." I said, "Sir," I said, "I can't swim like that." He says, "Well, you got 2 weeks to learn because the school starts in 2 weeks. So your job for the next 2 weeks is be at the pool and figure it out."
Yeah.
Did you pilot every program they wanted to?
It kind of seems that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I ended up being the honor graduate of the school.
Seems to be a trend.
Yeah.
I was always driven by fear of failure.
Yeah.
Fear of failure drove me And it's unfortunate because I wish I could have been driven by love or something different, but it was fear that drove me. So I went to MCIWS school, and then the screeners came through, and they were looking for recruiters. And they said, okay, we're going to take you to be a recruiter. And I said, I am not a recruiter. I said, you don't understand. He sent me to drill instructor school or something. He looked at me and he goes, yeah, you're a little scary. You're probably not a recruiter. Okay, drill instructor school. They sent me to DI school out on the West Coast.
Where'd you go to boot camp?
I went to boot camp, Parris Island, East Coast.
So this is so you were a boot in Parris Island. Mm-hmm. Now you're a hat.
Yeah.
At MCRD.
Yep, in San Diego. I actually was supposed to get orders to Parris Island. You know, you always want to be a hat where you were born as a Marine. And the orders came through late. And I got called to the office that I was UA. I was UA from being at DI school, unauthorized absence. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, don't worry about it. It's an admin screw up. But here's the deal. They don't have any openings down there for like 9 months. But we can get you in at San Diego next month. I'm like, I already got my house packed up. So I switched to San Diego. Went out there, went through DI school. They honor the top 3 graduates. I was the number 3 graduate. So I received a NCO sword, and
nice.
I got to pick of which battalion I wanted to go to, and I chose 1st Battalion.
Were you corporal or sergeant?
I was a sergeant. A meritorious sergeant. I got meritorious sergeant just before I went to DI school.
Nice.
And I went to jump school before that as well. That was a gift. I got hooked up because I was a good guy.
Talk to me about MCRD. How was that compared to Parris Island? Look, this is beyond the podcast.
No,
right?
I know. Parris Island was scary for me as a recruit, but being in San Diego, I realized there were a lot of times at Parris Island that training was canceled due to thunderstorms, lightning, too hot, inclement weather. The sand fleas were terrible. The humidity was terrible. But in San Diego, the weather's always beautiful.
Yeah.
It was the rarest of occasions. And in San Diego, they've got a chip on their shoulder because the Marine Corps calls San Diego Marines Hollywood Marines. Hey, Hollywood, where's your sunglasses and suntan lotion, right?
Yeah.
That's what they always pick on them about. And then when we do our field training, a weapons training battalion, those mountains are crushing.
Yeah.
So,
and that is the argument, right? MCRD, San Diego, you have the mountains.
Oh yeah.
Parris Island, you have the sand fleas.
Yeah.
Like
the biggest mountain in San Diego, or the biggest mountain at Parris Island, is a speed bump on the road. That's about it.
Kind of like where we sit here in Louisiana. We have a levee. Go get some elevation, stand on the levee. You're actually at sea level on the top of the levee. Everything else is below it. Yeah. So when a river rises here, right, it is above everything on the other side of the levee. Yeah. But
so I actually I did 3 years as a driller. Now it's a 2-year tour, but I did 3 years there. And everybody said, after I graduated, because I graduated with honors out of DI school, that, Marine combat instructors of water safety survival were in high demand.
Yeah.
They were a rare commodity at that time. So they said, you're going to go straight to the pool, and you are going to spend your entire time as a drill instructor at the pool because you're an MCIWS. And you're never really going to get to train recruits.
That wasn't good to hear.
No, it wasn't, because that wasn't what I went there for. But because I was an honor graduate, they had to send me to a battalion to at least get 1 or 2 platoons in, and then they were going to pull me. You
had an opportunity to prove yourself.
I did, and there was. I fell in amongst a bunch of drill instructors that trained a certain way. It was all about how hard you could push the recruits. That's what it was about. And that didn't resonate with me because I thought we were in the business of making Marines. I get that I need to push them, but I also need to teach them.
Yeah.
I need to work on this, that eagle, globe, and anchor that's supposed to be emblazoned on their heart. that makes them a Marine, that causes somebody to charge into the sound of guns for the cause, for their brothers, for all that. And, you know, abusing them, crushing them physically, that doesn't do that. Mm-mm. So I kind of danced or marched to the beat of a different drummer, and I got crap for it from the other drill instructors. Oh, softy, oh, you love them, don't you? And I remember one time I got tired of hearing that, and I looked him dead in the eye, and he said, "You're damn right I do. You're damn right."
Was it crickets after that? Did they have a response?
It was. There was a truth that was told to them that there was nothing to be said. It was like, oh. So I did 3 cycles as a drill instructor, and then we had a really big summer cycle coming through, and the company was expanding from 6 platoons to 8 platoons, and they needed 2 more senior drill instructors, and I was one of them. A lot of those drill instructors that gave me grief when I was a new drill instructor, they call him Bob Newhat. It's for like Bob Newhart.
Yeah.
That's what they call the new. Come here, Bob. Get over here, Bob.
So talk to me about your path with the different roles of the different hats. Did you go straight to a senior?
No.
Explain the difference in those 3.
You bet. So typically a platoon of recruits has 3 drill instructors. There's the new guy. That's typically Bob. He just came out of DI school. He doesn't really have the knowledge or experience to teach anybody anything. So his role is create chaos. You are the wild man. You are the thorn in their side all the time, that in the ear, that constant nagging that's going to push and push and push. All by design. Combat is chaos. We're desensitizing them from day one to be able to excel and accomplish in a chaotic environment. So that was Bob Newhat's job. Then you've got the Strong J. He's the guy with the most experience without being the senior drill instructor, and he's the teacher. He's the one that's teaching them drill. He's the one that's teaching them about being a Marine, all the basic things that we're pushing, that we're required to give them to be a basically trained Marine, thoroughly indoctrinated to love and core and country. That was his role. And then you've got the senior drill instructor. He wears a different belt. It's a black leather belt. That's Daddy. He's the guy that keeps his finger on the pulse. He's the one that either turns up the heat or turns down the heat. He's the one that can see we are pushing so hard that it's counterproductive. Drill instructors, go home. Get away, I got him. He said, bring it in, boys. How we doing?
Yeah.
Takes it down. To be able to read those atmospherics and keep it so that you can take a platoon of recruits to here, like if the requirement's here, you get them to the requirement, or you could take it as far up as you want. If you get them, if 9 is the requirement, you get them to a 15, well, they're off to a great start. They're going to be a 50 before their 4 years are up. So, I became a senior drill instructor, and I was one of the few. They used to refer to it as an honorable thing, like a title. He was a senior sergeant, because most of the senior drill instructors were E6s, E7s, staff sergeants or gunnery sergeants. I was a sergeant.
That's awesome.
And
as a senior?
Yes.
That's a big deal.
And there was even one cycle where they put 2 staff sergeants under me, and I had to explain that to the recruits.
Wow.
Because they were brand new staff sergeants, and the company staff wanted to make sure that they were trained properly.
That's impressive.
It was an honor.
The Marine Corps doesn't do that very easily. So to allow the user to understand that is something that does not happen, right? Especially in the front of other Marines being trained. Right. That's incredible.
It was an incredible honor.
So let me ask you something. Did you have them build the throne when you talked to you know exactly what I'm talking about? That big old smile.
Absolutely.
You did.
Absolutely.
Can you please share that? I know Mike would love to hear that.
I have no clue. Yeah.
So there are times when it's time for me to talk to the boys. And I've seen it done by I saw it done by multiple senior drill instructors before. And I learn from everybody. I learn the good from people, and I learn the bad from people, and all of those become tools in my tool belt. This is what I will never do. This is what I think I was good, but I'm going to expound upon it. So I would tell them, hey, set it up, boys. We're talking. Do it now. And they start grabbing foot lockers, and they build this throne out of foot lockers. And you just sit there, right?
They build a king's throne.
And it's incredible. I mean, it is such an awesome feeling.
Is this unique to you, or is this a...
No, because I learned this.
I
learned this, yeah.
When were you a hat?
I was a hat from 93 to 96.
So I went to BootCamp, MCRD, 98, February to May, and that was a thing. He'd come out, build my throne, right? and explain it, you got 60 recruits, you got 60 or 30 bunk beds, and each bunk bed has, 2 foot lockers in front of it? And so this is just a huge squad bay, probably 10 times, 20 times the size of this room, and so everybody's online, and then the DI comes out and it's just like, build my throne. And everybody just goes, whoa, just grabbing everything, and it happens, and all of a sudden here's a big throne, and he walks over and he sits in it. Oh. Eyes, ears, right?
Yep.
Man, I want to see you back in action, dude.
And I'd take my campaign cover off, and I'd set it down. I said, take your covers off. And they're all seated at, left over right, hands and knees, right? And I'd say, no, relax.
Yeah.
Uncross your legs. It's almost like smoking if you got them, but, no cigarettes. And I said, how we doing? And they, at first, just like how I did not want to volunteer.
Trick question.
I'm like, I am not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They were being set up. And I'd pull somebody up, and I said, where are you from? And we talk. And you start to break that. And they knew that I cared.
It's Father Joe.
I saw the person. They were my recruits. They were going to be Marines, but I saw the person in them always. And man, the power in that.
That's
to
incredible.
Be able to see beyond the camouflage, beyond the shaved head, beyond the birth control device glasses, right? And to be able to see.
Explain that.
So the Marine Corps called them. I don't know what they call them now. They call them BCDs.
Nasty.
And you out there the worst looking glass. And then we
birth
make them
control.
Because ain't nobody get laid.
No, nobody procreate with these things on.
And we make them take a piece of white tape and put it here and here. It has their name and their platoon number. And then right before the range, we have make them take one of those foamy earplugs and tape it in the middle to have their glasses raised up like this, so that when they're shooting, they're looking through the center focal point of the lens, not over it, because it changes the impact. It changes where you're hitting based upon how you're looking through the glasses. And it makes them look even stupider. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
So after MCRD, when did you go to Parris Island? Did you go to Parris Island as a hat?
No.
You did two tours.
No. So after MCRD, I went back to the Fleet Marine Force. I was at Camp Pendleton, 1st Light Armor Reconnaissance, did Westpac float with them, a lot of training. And then I wanted to go to MSG duty, Marine Security Guard. I wanted to be. I got meritorious staff sergeant off the drill field, so I was meritoriously promoted again. That was a big one. That's kind of a rare. The higher up in rank you are, the rarer those meritorious promotions get. And
so how much time in service do you have at this point?
I came in '87, and that would have been.
So you're about
that
6.
Would have been '96. So
you're about 9 years into it.
Yeah, about 9 years in. Yeah. And the promotions were slow, really slow at that time. There were people retiring as staff sergeants and gunnies.
Wow.
So,
and you've been, at this point, you've been meritorious essentially every rank.
No, three. Meritorious PFC, sergeant, and staff sergeant, yeah. Lance corporal and corporal were time and grade, time in service. So I wanted to go MSG duty, Marine Security Guard, and I called the monitor, and I'm like, hey, I want to get called the MSG guys. They're like, oh, yeah, we're looking at your file now. We want to bring you in. This will be awesome. You're going to be fantastic. But there was a need, and the monitor said, oh, you're a drill instructor. I need drill instructors. I'm like, well, I already did that. He goes, well, you can't do 2 different B billets. I'm like, there's like thousands of guys that have 2 different B billets. How is that? How is that not possible? He goes, look, I need drill instructors at OCS at Quantico to make officers. And he said, I said, well, I don't want to do that. I said, if I go and to be a drill instructor again, I'm going to lose my marriage, man. I mean, it was hard enough on our marriage the first time.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, he says, I already know you're looking for orders. So you don't take these orders. I'm going to give you orders someplace else. And someplace else could be anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And you can't turn down orders at that time. So I said, okay.
You didn't have access to go see another monitor.
No, that was it. It was the 03 monitor, and I was an 03, and that was my guy. That's what I got. The MSG monitor, he was ready to take me, but he said, your 03 monitor has to release you.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't get that, so I said, okay, I'll take him. So I got orders to Officer Candidate School, Quantico, Virginia. I had 2 years there, being able to train, screen, and evaluate future officers for the Marine Corps. And that was tough on me because I picked up gunnery sergeant when I was at 1st LAR, so I'm E7 now. And that meritorious promotion just put me ahead of the wave on everything. It was the one that put me on the front side to get promotions. And so I went there as a gunny. I'm getting older and tireder, right? My body's been abused a lot at this point. And these young officer candidates show up required to run a first-class physical fitness test. So you're starting off fast, and you got the hills of Quantico to contend with, and the humidity and all that other stuff. And our job is to lead from the front.
So this is the big difference, being someone who has been through both boot camp on the enlisted side, and then I went through OCS in Quantico, Virginia, and that was a big deal because I blew it off. I was just going to gut it out, right? But everybody comes in, and it's totally different from the enlisted side, right? Everybody jumps up, and they're only counting people who don't do 20, right? So everybody just jamming them out. I'm just like,
right,
dang. And everybody's 18-minute 3-mile, and I was just going to be stubborn and going. I just gut this out. I'll get in shape while I'm there. That was not easy.
And that's the thing. If you come in at peak physical fitness, it allows you to do the physical part and focus all of your efforts on the learning, the administration, and all the academics that were thrown at you, because it's all about testing. We're not really there to make officers. Mm-hmm. Our objective was never really about training them to do certain things. It was about putting that pressure on them,
making them quit.
Absolutely.
Right, because that was the biggest difference is they would ask you, you don't want to be here, do you? It's easy.
Yeah.
Just go home. Right? And we had like 4 foot of snow on the ground while we went through, and it was awesome. So it's boots and utes, and I was in decent shape. I was always a first classer, but I was not ready. They hammered you when you got there. They just flat out hammered. Let's get in the woods. Let's get in the mountains.
What? Hammered you?
We're gonna run, and from shin splints to it takes a.
I even got shin splints there.
Yeah.
Put me down for a little while.
Talk to me about the Quigley.
So you want the summer Quigley or the winter Quigley?
No, man, I want the real Quigley.
So we got this little creek swamp area, and there's this, there's a lot of different courses during we're running with logs through the swamps, and a lot of things are just pure endurance, like to endure, and what you're enduring is pain. And the Quigley is this really smelly, nasty muck area, water, but it's all soft mud too. Culverts that you have to go through.
Underwater.
A barbed wire running across it that you've got to go through, and you passing through it, low crawl area, back crawl area, and then up this muddy embankment and onto the 20 or other obstacles after that.
The cliff.
The cliff with the net and all that. And,
can't feel anything.
Mm-hmm. So in the summer, it's smelly, nasty, foul, and slippery. But this is Quantico, Virginia. It has winter, and that Quigley freezes. Well, you would think, well, there ain't no Quigley now. Oh, no, we got sledgehammers. break up the ice, pull out the bigger sheets, leave the smaller chunks in there to keep it at a nice, 33 degrees.
This is before Wim Hof.
But actually, in the summer,
It was before Wim.
Wim.
In the summer, they actually take those artillery simulators, and they throw them in there to chase out the water moccasins.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the winter, you hit that water, and it's cold, and you're in it, and you're moving. You've got to do all these obstacles and stuff through the water. I remember it. So we, as the drill instructors, before we run a cycle of officers through, we run that course. And we
do it yourself.
We have to do everything.
Yeah, everything.
We have to do it all.
That's Marine Corps.
And I remember having my face all bruised up the next day because of the pieces of ice and chunks that were hitting me, as you're trying to push through. And by the time you get to the backside, your legs don't work.
No, they
You're
don't.
really just clawing through this frozen mud to try to get up, to try to get your body moving.
Yeah,
again.
we had 7 candidates that were evac for hypothermia.
Hypothermia, yeah.
It was we had a bad winter course, 04. It was incredible. We showed up to the Quigley, and they probably had 6 inches of ice just laid over on the banks, and I'm like, there's no way, And they give you the shitty ass gear that gets hung up on everything. And so you're trying to go underwater. I'm stuck. My big ass is stuck in a fucking culvert, underwater.
The Marine Corps does not have shitty ass gear. What are you talking about?
No.
They would never buy something from the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a little sarcasm. I don't know. Maybe a little bit.
We focus on buying good guns, but other than that, it's like whatever.
Yeah, define good.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was OCS, and it was an incredible honor. I still have a lot of officers that stay in touch with me and reach out, I always, again, I was always really cognizant of the power that I wielded with my words.
Yeah.
That would resonate with these guys throughout their careers.
Yeah. What year was this?
So that would have been 2000 to 2002. Yeah.
I was at January 04. I just missed you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is cool.
And it's cool that we reconnected in 05.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So from there, my marriage did fall apart. I guess I knew that was coming. And we separated, and I knew that it was going to be a real challenge for my kids. So I went to the monitor and I begged. Because I was in zone for first sergeant, and my time at OCS was up. They only keep you there for 2 years, and I said I need to stay in the area for a little while to see this through, this transition. And he said, he's like, I can't help it. He's like, I'm gonna be a first sergeant. And he's like, no, you don't know that. I said, pull up my file. He looked at it and he goes, okay, yeah, you're going to be a first sergeant this year. You've got quite a career under your belt. And I said, he's like, the only thing that I've got, he's like, how tall are you? I said, I'm 6'2". What's your PFT score, your physical fitness score? I said, perfect score, 300. He says, you got the look. He said, I need an operations chief at Marine Barracks, 8th and I, Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I said, I'll take it. And I went up there and I worked operations. They do the evening ceremonial parades and they do the burials at Arlington. And I picked up first sergeant, and they moved me to Alpha Company, which has the Marine Corps Color Guard and the Silent Drill Platoon. So I was there first sergeant.
So talk to me about the 8th and I. What is that unit? What does it do?
So Marine Barracks 8th and I is the oldest post in the Marine Corps. It is the first posting in the Marine Corps, and they were there co-located at the Naval Yard, and their job was to protect the Capitol.
That's right.
Initially, that's what they were created for.
What's the flagpole there? What's at the top of that flagpole there?
The truck?
The flagpole at 8th and I.
I don't remember.
What the last Marine there? What are they supposed to do?
Oh, so the truck. The truck is.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The truck is a ball at the top of the flagpole, and in it are. I think it's 145 caliber round, matches, and instructions for how to burn the flag. I think those were the 3 items that are in there, if I recall
To do
correctly. To burn. So if the post is overrun, the flag comes down. You burn the flag, and that bullet is for you.
That's right. You won't be taken alive.
Wow.
Right.
And it stands. It's there today. It's amazing. That's that's hallowed ground, man. That's it's very sacred, and the fact that I've heard a lot of stories personally from you about that place, and I've been there to experience it myself. And anyone who's ever seen a silent drill platoon that the Marine Corps has, and understands the incredible discipline and the selection processes it even takes to get to that point. And then once again, you're in a position as the mentor that oversees, and you are the father to these Marines at one of the most prestigious commands in the Marine Corps, right? When I mentioned earlier, you walked with kings and you were admired by kings, right? I'm talking about the Joint Chiefs. I'm talking about those decision makers who are driving, the national defense policy of this nation, and they absolutely admired you.
It was very humbling.
Yeah.
At 8th and I, the company commander that I served with was Captain Peter Pace.
Yeah.
He was the son of the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Peter Pace, when I was at OCS, when I had the shin splints, they moved me off to the academic unit so I could heal for a cycle. And I became an instructor, and I taught land navigation and a couple other topics. I ended up receiving the Elihu Rose Award for Outstanding Academic Instructor of the Year for Officer Candidate School from the Marine Corps University, which, because I was, bloom where you're planted, know who you are, and I've had a really good ability, or at least a sense of being able to adapt to my surroundings. I was not there to be the drill instructor. I was there to educate. And so in order to educate, they needed to buy into it. And you know me, I'm goofy anyhow, right? So I goofed, and I did some funny stuff, and I used all the multimedia tools available to me, and I cut them up, and I boiled it down. I always said I spoke it to them in Mickey Mouse terms.
Yeah.
Just silly, like, the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And all of the land navigation scores shot through the roof to the point where they thought I was cheating. I was doing something that was giving them the answers. And they had somebody come sit in on one of my classes. And I just saw a Marine sitting back there. And I'm like, whatever. Look, I'm here in my world, dude. I'm doing my thing. He's back there laughing. And I think he went back and said, no, this is legit. What he's doing is legit. And so when I got that award, it was presented to me by, I don't even recall what role he was in the time, but General Peter Pace was the one that gave me that award. Fast forward a couple years later, I'm his son's first sergeant, and his son is getting out of the Marine Corps, and it's almost the end of my time at 8th and I as well. And General Pace came, and we had a dining in. And what dining in is a real formal kind of quiet. No, it was a mess night because there was no spouses, right? It was just us Marines. And General Pace was there, and he pulled me off to the side. And he said, First Sergeant Rovnak, it is good to see you again. And I'm like, come on, man. How, of the billions of people that you run into between then and now, you remember the 4 minutes that you met me and gave me that award? That's spooky. That's spooky.
Yeah.
And his son said, yeah, my dad's got this weird thing for remembering people. I don't know how he does. He's got this system. And, he said, my son's time, he's leaving, getting out of the Marine Corps. He's made that decision. He's not going to stay in, which I honor that. He said, but his time in the Marine Corps was made really, really special by you. And I really am grateful for that.
That's awesome.
He tells me about you and how you are and what you do. And then, so then we did a parade, and it was his son's last parade. And there's a very, very sacred building at 8th and I that's called Center House, and that's where the officers' bar is. And there's so much Marine Corps history behind it. And he said, First Sergeant, would you join us at Center House? I'm like, oh boy, like I'm going to be the only enlisted guy in there. And all the officers are in there with General Pace, and they're hooping it up and hollering and drinking and, trying to get up next to General Pace. And I am standing way off on the other side of the room in the corner with my watch. Like, okay, I'll stay 10 minutes. Everybody sees me here, and then I'm getting out of here. And General Pace, everybody's trying to get his attention, and he zeroes in on me. And he said, First Sergeant, what are you drinking? I said, Sir, I'm drinking whatever the general says I'm drinking.
That's a great answer.
And he's like, Colonel, get over here.
Oh, shit.
And gets him a beer and said, get him. And it was like the Red Sea parted, and all these officers got out of the way, and they're all looking at me as this colonel gives me my beer. I'm about 5 sips into it. General Pace is like, First Sergeant, you done with that yet? I'm like, oh. And I got snookered, man. I was tore up. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
He made sure.
That's awesome, man.
That he got the First Sergeant.
That's incredible.
It was an honor.
Yeah.
An absolute honor.
I bet it was.
Because I hold him in such high regard.
I think everybody in the Marine Corps does.
Yeah.
He's incredible. He's an incredible person.
Yeah.
Wasn't he the first Marine that was assigned to the Joint Chiefs?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the vice before, I believe, the vice chair, if I recall correctly.
He's an incredible, incredible person. That's an incredible story.
So, but you mentioned something. You hit on something that I wanted to make sure that I kind of elaborated on. I'm getting older through this story. And there was a point in time when all of these young Marines were my younger brothers. I'm at a point now in my career where they're becoming my sons. And that was very different. That was an integral part of the final years of my time in.
Yeah.
They became my kids.
Yeah.
That was a big shift in my here for me.
So talk to me about how that carries over to 3-2.
So yeah, I got orders. Actually, in typical Marine Corps fashion, we did a staff NCO parade where there's no officers, just the staff NCOs do it, and all the sergeants, majors of the Marine Corps, or not all of them, but a whole bunch of them, are there for this parade because they're just coming out of the Sergeant Major Symposium, and so there's no pressure, right? And we kicked it through the uprights. They were like, that was the best parade.
Wow.
The staff NCOs have ever done, and it was the best parade of this season ever done. You guys, and they were, it's just, I got all these sergeant majors patting me on the back and how great we were. And the sergeant major from 2nd Marine Division, now I'd been screened to be the first sergeant up at Camp David. And the first thing that they do is they run a clearance on you.
Wow.
And it's top level clearance, top secret SCI.
Wow.
And I got the clearance, and the colonel wanted me to go. He selected me. Again, the monitor said,
Nah.
Hey, buddy, we're in Iraq. We're at war in Iraq, and you haven't been there yet. And if I send you to Camp David, they're gonna soak you up there for at least 3 years. He says, you can't be a sergeant major without having been to Iraq. You got to go. You got to go get those medals. And then it was always about checking the blocks and the career and the awards and all that. And I said, I think I'm getting out when I hit 20. I don't see me going beyond this. There's a divorce, there's children. I said, I've been infantry the whole time in. You guys you're gonna send me to an INI unit or to swing with the wing or FSSG or something, something outside of the infantry to round me out to be a sergeant major. I need to understand the whole Marine Corps, not just infantry. And he said, yeah, you're right, we will. I'm like, well, that's not around here, and I will be away from my kids, so I don't see it happening. He goes, look, you need to go. I got guys that are getting ready to hit their 3rd tour in Iraq. I said, no, that resonates with me. I said, you're right, got it. I got orders to go. So I talked to the 2nd Marine Division Sergeant Major. I say, hey, Sergeant Major, I said, I've heard that you've got openings for first sergeants at 2nd Light Armor Reconnaissance Battalion. I am a Light Armor Reconnaissance Battalion Master Gunner, school trained at Fort Benning. I was one of the first master gunners. I said, I know that vehicle, its tactics, its employment better than any first sergeant in the Marine Corps, I guarantee you. He goes, yeah, I do have openings down there. He says, is that where you want to go? You know, we just had a great parade and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the good, right? I said, I do. He goes, here's the thing. I need you down there in 2 weeks. You can't take a bunch of leave and wait and come down. I need to fill that seat now. I said, roger that, Sergeant Major, I'll do it. I went home, got my stuff together. I was dating somebody at the time, and I said, I got to execute now. And I went down there, and I checked in. I said, Sergeant Major, First Sergeant Rovnak reporting as ordered, thinking he's going to be like, hey, brother, how you doing? He's like, all right. He says, I'm sending you to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. I said, Sergeant Major, I don't know if you remember, 8th and I. He goes, I remember. Oh, I remember. You're going to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. I said, well, we talked about LAR. He said, did I stutter?
When was this?
That was in 2005. 2005. No, when do we... Yeah, it was...
It was either late 4 or early 5.
It would have been late 4.
Because when we were in IOC, right, it was right at that time, but they came in and said, look, we got hot fills right now. 3-2's going over. They're going over in about 3-4 weeks. We need 2 guys right now. And it was myself and Brian Stan. And we were like, we'll go first. Yeah. That's how we got the 3-2. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's how I got the 3-2.
Yeah. And so it was a hot fill because they needed them.
Yeah, I got slipped to Mickey. That's why he wanted me down there early, because 3-2 was getting ready to go and do their workup.
Yeah.
He knew he was sending me to 3-2 the whole time.
So when did you check in there?
I mean, it was literally right before we went out west and did the workup. It was right. So
you and I checked in at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember when I checked in, I was in HNS. I think we all went to HNS initially, but I remember seeing you there.
But then that's the other part of it. I'm a fairly new first sergeant.
Yeah.
Typically, a new first sergeant is given one of the line companies.
Yeah.
The hardest company to manage is HNS, headquarters and service, because you've got the administration, the logistics, all the cats and dogs, all the support element. It's a lot to juggle, and it requires experience. The first sergeant, who was the acting sergeant major there at the time, I checked in, and he said, hey, I'm sending you to HNS company. And I'm like, I'm really junior, you know that, right? Like I just became a first sergeant not too long ago. He goes, I'm giving you HNS company. I said, you know what? Roger that. Perfect. Good.
Yeah.
I'll show you. And then, we deployed to Iraq together. So I think, that's it. That was my last.
I'm gonna share a story about First Sergeant Joe Rovnak's leadership. So it was March 23rd. We were hit with a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. Lost a Marine. It was pretty violent, and it was a very difficult situation. And you brought it to my attention when we linked up again, and you said, do you remember what you said to me? And I said, no, I don't. And you said, I met you in the hall of that building in Keim, and you said, First Sergeant, I got to get him back on the horse, or we're not going to get back out there. And so we went right back out, and First Sergeant looks at me, he says, I'm going with you, and I'm going to be in a turret. And that's exactly what he did. He got in one of the gun trucks and manned it, and he went on mission with us. We went several days. He started going with us because we just it was the first casualty. I think we were only there for about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And it was violent. It was incredibly violent. Wasn't that far from the base. And just said, First Sergeant, we got to get him back on a horse. And Joe looks at me, and says, I'm going with you.
What did that mean to you?
He gave me the strength to walk forward. That was the leadership in the Marine Corps that I was looking for, right? That it was something my father would have done, right? You just got your ass busted, son. Grab my hand, son. We'll go see him. And that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't good, right? We got out, and we ran right into conflict again, and it got violent again. But you never faltered, man. You never faltered, and that was incredible because I knew what it did to the enlisted Marine, and that is what's different between the enlisted side and the officer side, right? Leadership is a very lonely position, because you don't have a cadre of officers to go back to and absorb, some of that thump that you took. The Marines, they get in and they have several enlisted Marines, and there's, not saying it's any easier, but just that sharing, that community experience, I felt incredibly alone. When you joined, that also, it just gave the enlisted Marines the confidence, right, to get back on that horse and go. So it was, for the longest time, it was just he and I together. And I know Sergeant Roth came in, and he was, he was a critical piece, exceptional gentleman. But that was, it didn't get any easier.
The higher I went in rank, the further I got from what I loved, and it was starting to become tea parties, kissing the ring, rubbing elbows, dropping names. I just wanted to be out with the boys.
Yeah.
So what I did was as much for me as it was for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I belonged.
Yeah, I tell you what, but the choice and the timing of when you decided to go out, because there were a lot of those folks that wanted to get out with the boys, right?
Right.
They didn't choose the same missions, Joe. You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah. So, and there were a lot of those people, and
those missions are where it mattered, though.
Yeah, man, it was ugly. It was ugly, and when we got out, it got even uglier. But you kept coming, and you didn't have to, right? That was incredible. That was.
I didn't have to for anybody else, but I had to for me.
Yeah.
You guys, that was really it. Where I belonged. Again, that long-haired hippie kid that knew he was Superman.
That's an incredible story. That's an incredible story that you went in because you believed that your father didn't think you could. And you fucking took everything from the Marine Corps and you made it better, right? And you were awarded, essentially every award that you could imagine that you chose to participate in. Joe's at the top. Joe's at the top. Joe's at the top. Everywhere you went. That's
which is funny when we get into the after the Marine Corps topic of how I felt about it.
Let's go. Talk to me. After 05.
Yeah, came back from Iraq and I was done. And it was all of it. It was the loss of Larry Philippon. It was the loss of Kevin Smith. It was the things that. So again, they became my children. And as a Marine Corps leader, I was able to recognize I'm combat ineffective because I will now make decisions. Sometimes it's important to be able to accept risk, to win a battle, to prevent future battles. I knew that my decision making now would always be to prevent my kids from getting hurt, which ultimately could lead to a whole lot more people getting hurt because of the decision I made. I wouldn't make a tactically sound decision. I would make an emotional decision. And I knew I was compromised. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not an effective Marine Corps leader.
Was it black and white at that point? Did you know?
Yes.
It wasn't.
It was, yep, I am compromised. I am no longer suited for this. So I ended up, and I was up on 20 years, and it was time to retire, and I did. I retired and rolled right into another job so I had the clearance still from 8th and I just never used it, but I had it, and it's good for 5 years, and somebody lovingly gave me good counsel and said, with this clearance, it will expire. Get a job of some sort that will carry it and keep it active. It's worth a lot of money, and they're hard to get. So I got a job with a security company that provided armed top secret clearance for one of the agencies in DC. And I worked for them, and I signed up to just be a security officer. That's all I wanted to be. No responsibility, just want to be me and my gun and my post, and that's it. And I went through their training course and came out on top of the class, and the president of the company called me down, and he said, why do you just want to be a security officer? I said, well, I started out in the Marine Corps as a private, cleaning toilets, and that seemed to work out pretty well for me. I didn't ever ask anybody to do anything I hadn't done before. And I said, I'll start out here as a security officer. Doesn't mean I'll always stay one. We'll just see how it goes. And he said, I respect that. I was with them for 3 years. I never even made it to the contract as a security officer. They called me and said, can we please make you a shift supervisor? And he said, I'm going to pay you a lot more money. I said, okay, I'll do that. That's fine. I was a shift supervisor for 4 months, and then the project manager was retiring. And I saw some of my peers that were getting their resumes ready to apply to it, and I'm like, oh no, that person cannot be my boss. No.
Yeah.
And they were interviewing. I'm like, man, at some point they're going to get desperate and they're just going to bring somebody in, right, that checks the block. And I'm like, no. I got to know the officers. They were good people and they deserved to have leadership. So I submitted my resume, and within 10 minutes my phone was ringing.
That's awesome.
And I went out and interviewed, and I became the program manager, and I was for a year. We received an award from their agency for the best outstanding contract security service provider for the year.
Wow.
And the president of the company came out and accepted the reward, and our retention was through the roof. We had people begging to switch contracts to
That's
Glow,
awesome.
And it was so simple.
Yeah.
Simply recognizing people, thanking them for the great work that they do day in and out. Simple stuff that made
And
the
that's just a testament to the intangible qualities of leadership, right? You don't see the value of it until it's gone. But when it's there, it's exactly what transpired with your leadership in that situation. And that's incredible, man. And that's I said it this past weekend, at a retreat that Joe and I were on. I was explaining Joe and the phenomena that he has on others. I say, you ever see that Etch-a-Sketch game where you take that magnet pencil and you put it on and all the little metal shit goes, right? That's people to Joe, right? He just has that energy. Yeah.
Bring it in.
Yeah. And you just get it to a level of making people comfortably uncomfortable, right? So it's when they go to release from that hug and they're not going anywhere because Joe's not ready to let go, and they're just, okay, I'll do it again.
We went from 0 to great friends really quickly.
In 7 minutes.
And I'm like, is this hug over?
Not yet.
Oh, man.
When our breathing sinks, then I know we're there.
Yeah.
We're good.
I mean, the truth is when you get in there, literally, your only choice is fight, right? Because there's no flight. You're not getting out. So I'm like, holy shit, I'm in a predicament now. I can't fight. I can't even get my knee up.
That's powerful to know the other side's perspective, because I never really knew how it was.
And I'm really triggered.
So there's no flight.
No. This will pass. This too shall pass.
Right? You got to
breathe into it.
When he locks you in a hug, you have two choices: a headbutt or a foot stomp. That's it. 'Cause everything else is just like, holy shit. Yeah, that's super cool, man.
Yeah, so I did the project management for a year, and then after that award, they asked me to come out to headquarters to be an operations manager and have multiple contracts under me, and I did. And I was a deputy operations manager, actually in charge of recruiting and screening for the entire company for the contract part. And then they promoted me to operations manager, and I have multiple contracts under me. And I realized, I'd cell phone, beeper, pager, BlackBerry, phone calls, middle of the night, weekend, trips out to other proposals, other bids, and I'm like, this is not what I retired for. I found myself going to the VA, going to the emergency room, going to get blood pressure medicine.
When did all this start?
This all started, this would have been, I retired in 2007. I retired.
It started that early?
I got out February of 2007, and this started by the end of 2007.
Wow. It's quick.
You know, there were things in Iraq that transpired. You know, the most memorable for me was we were out doing a mine and IED sweep, and we stopped for the night, and you know, you set up security, you set up your perimeter, and then you lay down in the rocks with your helmet and your flak on and lean over and go to sleep. And a couple hours later, you wake up and you do it all over again. That's going to bed in combat, right? You just roll over and go to sleep. And I was right next to the radio operator, Corporal Roberts, and I remember snapping to awake and saying, "What direction, Roberts?" And he's like, "First Sergeant." I'm like, "What direction did that shot come from?" Because I heard one shot. He goes, "First Sergeant." I said, "Roberts, I swear to God, if you were sleeping, I'm going to freaking crush you." He goes, "First Sergeant, I was not asleep. I've been awake the whole time. There was no shot." And that's when I knew something was wrong. And that was the first time that I started hearing shots and IEDs in my sleep to prevent me from going into REM, because REM was unsafe. I could be hurt. Somebody could sneak up on me.
Yeah.
So then, you know, with the pressure of the job and the wave that caught up to me after leaving the Marine Corps, that whoosh, like, oh, all those memories of images of things as you're rolling through and pushing through that never got processed started doing their thing, dancing around up there. So, but that, you know, I decided this is not a good career move for me. I've climbed this ladder quickly. I probably shouldn't have. Maybe if I'd have put more thought into it, I would have stayed in a comfortable area. So I said, it's time to move. So I had an opportunity. I was at a barbecue with a Marine that I served with, Donnie Brazil, First Sergeant Brazil.
Yeah,
And
to put it in context, First Sergeant Brazil was actually when I made the transition during the middle of that deployment over to India. Right, First Sergeant Brazil was my first sergeant. I have incredible respect for that gentleman as well. He's old school.
He and I were anomalies.
Yeah,
we were the outcasts.
Yeah,
because we were different.
That's right.
The difference was we loved our Marines.
Two incredibly strong first sergeants in one unit. It was incredible to see, man.
And we both retired.
Yeah.
At almost the same time.
We went to the same place after.
Yeah. It was, and he's, you know, I saw him at the barbecue, and he asked what I was doing. He said, "You like it?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's killing me." He goes, "Oh," and he says, "I'm going to make some phone calls." I mean, where he was working was Defense Intelligence Agency, and there was a really, really heavy deployment support element going forward, working with our special operations guys, embedding analytic, collection, things like that. And he was managing that program to get those guys trained and ready to go out, and then bringing them back and keeping all those supports filled.
Yeah.
And they needed help. They needed another guy. And I went to a mock interview, not with the agency, but with the contract company that was going to, you know, fill that position. They're like, "Hey, let's be honest. You're already hired. We're just going to sit here and talk for a little bit and make like we're doing an interview." That's Donnie laid that foundation there.
Yeah.
This happened quite a bit in your career, I would imagine.
No, you got no.
But that's what Donnie. Yeah, I'm sure Donnie.
Yeah,
Donnie probably went and said, "Hey, you got a minute? Look, here's the deal. You're hiring this guy, and I swear to God."
That's what he does, man.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
So I went in and I started working there, and it was amazing because I was back. I was worried about being in that green suiter environment again amongst military people, but I felt really awesome supporting them, but from way back in the shadows. It was important work that I was doing, helping people to go out and help our people.
Yeah.
I was with them for a few years as a contractor. They decided to turn that position into a government position. They said, "Hey, would you apply to it if we did that?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And then they did it they said, "Well, you need to go to this screening pool that we're doing. So we're just screening people, and we're going to interview you and now you're in that pool. So if we ever do decide to, wink, wink, fill this position, we can select the most qualified candidate from that pool. And that's how I became a government employee. They were like, oh, look at there, you were selected.
Oh, man.
It was good.
How much time did you spend at the Defense Intelligence Agency?
Just over 10 years. I did 3 trips to Afghanistan, 3 tours in Afghanistan with working operations in both Kabul and Bagram. We had a really heavy intelligence collection and movement element out there embedded. And, I knew ground combat operations. There's not a whole lot of ground combat operations guys in an intelligence agency.
That's right.
They just don't go there.
Yeah.
There's no need for them.
With experience.
Right. Yes, with combat experience, because that deployments program was really unique. You needed a guy that knew what it was like on the ground because he knew what they needed.
Yeah. And he could also decipher and filter out a lot of the bullshit that they deal with.
Absolutely. Filter out the crap that we didn't need. Get rid of that.
Absolutely.
Somebody's good idea fairy.
That's where that experience comes in.
Yeah. And
thank goodness for you. That's incredible, right? Without that, it's a fucking slaughterhouse.
It was, yes. Yeah. And people, I was also able to working with some of these analysts are young.
Yeah.
Just out of college. They're brilliant. They're smart, but it's like, I've seen a cartoon one time where it says school for the gifted and the door says pool and there's a kid pushing on it with all his might. That's some of these analysts. They're brilliant when it comes to finding terrorists and analyzing intelligence. But when it comes to okay, no, turn the gun around. You're actually pointing at yourself. Point it that way.
Yeah.
That's not so much. Yeah. So I was able to be the dad, the father to them, and they, everything that came out of me was gospel because they knew who I was.
Yeah.
I was a Marine with multiple theaters of wars under my belt, and they knew that I was going to take care of them.
And just to recap on that, there's Panama, then there's Desert Storm, the liberation of Kuwait, and then there's Operation Iraqi Freedom, still with the Marine Corps, and then 3 tours, Operation Enduring Freedom. That's incredible. That's, I mean.
So I look so old.
Yeah. No, I think you look great, man.
You're old.
Your eyes actually look fresher than they did a week ago. You're a good-looking man.
You're right.
Yeah. So talk to me about so your medical problem. You started noticing 2007, even going into getting checkups, physicals, or just starting to go into the institutions, hospitals to start monitoring your health. Mm. Talk to me about what transpired from 2007 to 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it was just over a decade of. And I didn't see it then. I had remarried. My wife probably saw it. She told me as much when that relationship.
What did she tell you?
She said, when you came back from Iraq, you were different.
How so?
I don't know.
This is fundamental, though, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I can pull up an article of a SEAL Team 6 guy that took his life. But when you read the article, and this is something very significant, because I noticed it too, is that multiple deployments, right? Multiple combat tours. But there was one deployment that he went to, and he came home, and his wife right away, she's like, he would come home, and we would take some time to decompress, and we would do our things, and it's definitely post-combat behavior. But then there was a deployment. He came home, and everything shifted. Something was different.
Yeah. For me, what I know inside of me versus what she saw, may be 2 different things. But for me, it was a father lost his children.
Yeah.
That was it, and that broke something. But it was also, that was like maybe it wasn't just the one thing that was the last straw, because it built upon Panama, the Gulf War, seeing the bodies, doing the shooting, watching in the Gulf War, helping Doc do surgical scrubs on men that could have been my grandfather, with fingers blown off, scrotums blown apart, waking up in the morning. I'm giving up my chem bio suits to keep them warm, because you go from 80 degrees to 40 degrees, and these guys were dying at night from hypothermia, exposure, dehydrated, malnourished, and I'm watching grandfathers, people, human beings, and I'm trying to help them, and I can't. I don't have enough blankets. I don't have enough ability to help them. And there's the moral injuries, and that's what I think it was. Those were injuries inside of me that, as a human being, was always, how are we doing this to each other?
Yeah.
How can human beings do this to each other?
Yeah.
And I know that I'm a warrior. I know that intrinsically I always have been, and I always will be. But there's a difference between being a warrior and slaughter.
Yeah.
There's a difference between two men meeting on the battlefield with honor and courage and going at it.
Yeah.
And just mindless slaughter. And that,
Yeah.
I think that's where I felt that it was done.
Yeah.
And so then those injuries were repressed and floating around in there somewhere, and it just started to catch up, and it was manifesting physically now. And I was at the emergency room at Walter Reed, and then eventually seated with a psychiatrist, and she's like, when did this start? And I'm like, well, just like, I don't know what, like a couple months ago. And my oldest daughter was with me, and she's looking at me like, and then so she's like, well, hold on a second, and she's like, have you been on any medication for this? And I'm like, well, I don't know, like I've had some pills for like headaches or whatever. And my daughter's like, so Dr. Gold, she's like, well, let me pull up your file here. And she's like, she's reading, looking, she goes, Joe, you have been struggling for so long, and we have failed you. The fact that you're even here right now is such a testament to the will that you have to just hang in there.
Yeah.
And that's what I had been doing the whole time, because eventually I went back and looked at all the times I had been seen and treated for the myriad of symptoms and other symptoms that were exacerbating, byproducts of what was going on inside of me, manifesting migraines, psoriasis, skin conditions, hypertension, blood pressure, all these different things just were.
So let me ask you, and I think this is incredible, because we talk about symptoms, and there are a lot of people, and one of the things within our organization is whether it's combat trauma, childhood sexual trauma, loss of a loved one, right? Perspective is perspective. So how it affects someone all depends on their perspective, right? If somebody grows up and their father is their world, right? Let's just say you have a daughter who loves her father, and then that father is lost, and they did everything together, right? Everything. The loss of a loved one becomes as damaging, right? Because when you wake up, the world is not the same anymore. And we are not sure how to present ourselves or live within it without that existence. And so, loss of a loved one. The two opposite ends are childhood sexual trauma and then combat trauma, right? The moral injury, the helplessness, those things take it to another level, and those, you generally have the worst case scenarios on those two opposite ends. But the symptoms, and essentially what it is, they call it PTSD, and depending on who you talk to, it will be defined in different ways. But essentially, PTSD is a cluster of symptoms, and this is how it's categorized: re-experiencing, avoidance, alterations in cognitive behavior and mood, and then re-experiencing hyperarousal, avoidance, and then alterations in cognitive behavior and mood. Talk to me about symptoms, right? The hyperarousal. What does that?
Yeah, and one of the questions also posed by the psychiatrist was, do you ever experience flashbacks, and how often? I was like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes I'm like, I don't know, once a month. My daughter looked at me again, and she's like, and this time she said, Dad. And I'm like, well, like, what do you mean by a flashback? You're talking about, like, me. That's what I didn't understand.
That's a great question and a great point.
Yeah.
What is a flashback?
Yeah, because she said, well, how often do you see or smell or feel or hear something that causes you to think about your experiences in war? And I'm like, you mean like how many times a day? And she looked at me, she goes, yeah. I'm like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot each day.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was what you meant by like flashback. I'm thinking like, when I really go back and I'm,
yeah. And I think that's incredibly important, because even in my initial struggles with PTSD, they were saying, you know, are you having flashbacks? And I'm, you know, when you think of flashbacks,
like what's in the movies, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm running around with a gun, whatever. I'm just having a flashback and I'm back in combat. But the truth is the trauma is buried so deep within our system that it is out of our conscious control. And so it's through our subconscious, and it's through the 5 different sensory receptors that start detecting everything as a threat. So it's a sight, it's a smell, and it naturally brings you back to those situations. So the way I explain a flashback is anger became my default mode. But when my child screams, my body is responding the same way as that dump truck coming through my building, right, with C4.
Right.
And so it's the flashback and the hyperarousal is I'm not even conscious of the trigger, but something creates it where my body is put in motion. Mm-hmm. And here's the difference, and here's the problem, and this is where the Western model of medicine just completely gets it wrong. Because as I'm sitting here, I'm seeing my child crying, or I'm hearing a child crying, and my mind consciously knows that this is a young child crying and there's absolutely no threat here. My body does not, right? My body is now the subconscious. And because of those experiences and the way my body is wired now, my body is saying this is safe. My mind is saying that this is safe. My body's going in a different direction. My blood pressure, right? I've been checked in multiple times because of this, but many occasions I've been in, my blood pressure is 200 over 140, right? I'm sitting there watching the Saints game in my garage, and I can feel it, right? When your face gets hot. There was no defining trigger, but I felt it. My wife was there. I had some friends there. And I'm like, all right, something's off. I went and got my blood pressure monitor. I got in my truck. I didn't tell anybody. I put it on, 187 over 136. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is going up. Right. And so I went straight to the ER, and the doctor hooks me, puts me on a blood pressure. The nurse, when I walk in, and her eyes, as my blood pressure is going up, her eyes are just like, and I'm sitting there and telling them, like, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to keep me calm, right? Mm-hmm. And so with PTSD, what happens is even in those subconscious triggers, right? You fall and you hit the bottom of the bucket, and then the bucket falls out, and it just feels like panic. And it's difficult to explain, but here is once upon a time a guy said, hey, you go left, you go right, I'm going up the middle. We're probably not coming back, but there was no hesitation, and there was no hesitation in those men that followed. Right. And now here I am living in a safe world, and I'm afraid to leave my own house because I know what's going to happen inside, and I have no idea what's going on. Right? There's a peaceful situation. I'm in a coffee shop, but my mind is going my body is going the opposite direction, right? The hypervigilance, the hyperarousal, the intrusive thoughts, the catastrophic thinking, the cognitive distortions. It is what's creating that internal response. Yeah. And so when we sit with a doctor, and this is, again, you started feeling this in 2007. It started for me. It was actually 2005 when we get back, when I couldn't go to bed without getting to the bottom of a bottle, right? Just everything. And you don't realize it at the time. I remember when my family came home, my family came to visit after our first deployment. I'm sitting on the porch, and It was a very conscious thought that I'll never forget. I had a blue sweatshirt. I had my college baseball sweatpants on, and I'm sitting there as my family's there. I'm just out of Iraq. They're here in North Carolina visiting me, and the only thing's going through my mind is I have no feelings for these people, right? I don't love it. I don't even love these. It didn't scare me,
right?
But I realized real quick why people went back to Vietnam. I didn't want to be here, right? So what we do is we go and it compounds, and then we come back and we sit with the white coats, the doctors, and they take the pharmaceuticals, treat the symptoms. I had the rashes popping up on my face even before I got out. Brian Stan, we were on qualifying on the range, and it was in the last round, and I would have this big red patch would pop up on my face, and I didn't know at the time, but it was stress. I thought it was a ringworm because we were training all the time. And so on the last round of firing, he throws my dog target up, and it's got a big red patch on her face. And I'm like, look at this son of a... So just getting back to the point is re-experiencing hyperarousal, avoidance, alterations in cognitive behavior and mood, right? These are the things that are the cluster, how they define PTSD. For a patient who is struggling with these things, these are the symptoms. This is not the root cause. We go and sit with the doctor, and they address symptoms and controlling the symptoms through pharmaceuticals. Not once in my 10, 12, 15-year journey did anybody say, what's going on in your life? Talk to me about stress. Talk to me about what is the stress disease, stress symptom connections here. It was never that. You're having bad thoughts, take the Prozac, right? You're having trouble focusing, take the Adderall. You're having trouble with pain, take the opioids. Oh, you need to sleep? Pop an Ambien, shut it off, get up and do it again. And that's what we keep doing. And if you look at all the side effects of these medications, it is exactly what this fucking community is dealing with right now, is the effects, the side effects of these pharmaceuticals. And it's a shame. It's a shame. So the flashback, I think, is a critical piece, because flashback is the way your body responds inside to normal everyday conditions.
Yeah.
We're not even aware of these triggers, but it mobilizes our body in a direction that is unhealthy.
In that really profound flashback, are you able to discern are you physically in that time period, or have you lost your timeline?
So, and I've
So you just said it too. You feel like you have to be somewhere mentally,
right?
Like you have to be in the war zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's not it at all.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of mental health professionals and doctors and people genuinely trying to help. And the best way that I was able to describe it is, look, almost every day we would travel in our armored vehicles down to a certain area near the edge of the camp. And we would load our weapons, and we would test fire them, and we would do our communications check on the comm, roger that, everybody's good, let's make sure everything works and we're ready to go. And at that time, you already feel it. You're ramping up, the heart rate's up, the pupils are pinpoint, you can hear everything, heightened sense of everything, because we're going to meet the enemy. And at that time, I would say goodbye to my wife. I would say goodbye to my children. I would say goodbye to everything that was dear to me that was back home. And I would say goodbye, and I love you.
And it was final.
And that's it.
Because you couldn't do your job if it wasn't final.
Because I'm not coming back.
That's right.
I'm not coming back.
You have made the decision to die, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Before you even step off, you made the decision that
yes,
you don't want to die. Our job is to make them die for their country, right?
But this is my last day.
That's right.
Are you trained to think that way, or is that just something that's naturally in your thought process?
I think we are trained to face death. That's what we teach Marines to do, but to do that thing is not in our training. That was something that I knew I had to do in order to be the best. Because when we shoot, when we engage, when we set up something called interlocking fields of fire, I am engaging the enemy that way. And the Marine to my left is engaging the enemy that way. At no time am I shooting the enemy directly in front of me. Somebody else is. He's responsible for my life. I'm responsible for his life. He's responsible for their lives. It's interlocking fields of fire. My job is not to keep myself alive. My job is to keep
That's right.
the Marines to my left and right alive. I'm banking on them doing the same. And that's why I had to say goodbye to everything.
That's right.
Because my job is now. That's what I love.
Let's talk about human performance, right? In order to perform at the highest level, it doesn't matter if you're an NFL athlete, baseball player, somebody on the debate team, you are at the pinnacle of performance. In order to perform at your optimal levels, you have to be in the absolute present, right?
Yes. Yep.
Our brain being a record of the past, if we are in those moments, those things that we fear, which is generally based on past experiences, now takes us out of the present, right? The people that we love, the possibility of dying, the possibility of never seeing them again, if we hold on to that and hold on to those emotions in those moments, it will not allow us to be who we are and who we need to be.
Those thoughts cannot be present when engaging the enemy.
That's right, and it's about performance. So, Mike, you asked, is that something they talk about or teach? No, the Marine Corps will never tell you, hey, prepare to die today, right? They'll tell you to prepare to make the other son of a bitch die.
Yeah.
But it's a very personal decision that I think everyone who has ever walked that path, actually walked that path, not been close to that path, but had to walk that path, has to make a conscious decision with their eyes closed while they're looking at themselves in a mirror, right? It is a personal decision. If I'm going to go, and this is exactly what you were saying, the interlocking fields of fire, because it's not about me, right? I don't want my family to hold me back because of me. If they hold me back, these guys are going to die. That's not acceptable, man. That is just not acceptable. And so it's difficult, right, on deployment, because those perspectives are two totally different. You leave everything that you love behind, and you have those that are left behind who are in constant worry and want to hear from you. You have access in modern warfare. In most cases, right? We had the sat phones. And so if we wanted to call, we could. That's not the mind shift that needs to happen, right? Because we got hit by a dump truck, right? Full of C4, drove to the building. We went out on a raid that night, right? There's no time to call mom. There's no time to call whoever, and that is not present. I as well as many others, and I know you did the same, Joe, just went blackout for a long time. And every now and then it would just be unemotional. I'm okay. Had another game. I was out for a while. I'm still good.
Yeah.
So you transition from this combat zone where everything's a threat to your life and the people to the left and right of you, and you're now in a world that looks a little different, right?
We'll back up real quick because we're missing the backside of that. We come back from the operation. I did live.
Yeah.
We come back inside the wire, we unload, we show clear, pull the trigger, nothing happens, roger that, weapons clear, shut down comms, we move back. I tell my wife I love her, I tell my kids I love them, and they're back into my world. So now I come back out here, and something happens, call it the flashback, which is happening multiple times a day. I discovered that the sights, the smell, for whatever reason, something
the hyper arousal
picks up on that, and all those switches flick, 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 going outside the wire.
So here,
but I never come back inside the wire because there is no wire. And what is the enemy? Where is the enemy? It's something in here. And so I never get to come back inside the wire. I never get to get. And so then there's the distancing, because I'm always pushing everybody out and away from me.
You got to think too, Joe. Marine Corps military, they do an incredible job of training you to go in there and do your job. And once that job is done, how much training goes into processing those instincts out of you so that you can integrate back into a civilian society? It doesn't happen.
You get a checklist with boxes on it, so make sure you turn in all your library books and you get your sticker scraped off of your windshield and you go about your way. You're done.
You're done and you're good. and you're tough and you're a warrior and you go home. And so what happens is in order to do that job, right, you talk about the repetitive conditioning, the stress inoculation that you have to continually put your body through to make those decisions under most adverse and extreme conditions, right? These are not normal conditions.
Right.
This becomes every fiber of your being, right? You woke up in the hotel and 3 days ago and you thought you forgot your fucking weapon. How insane is that?
I got up and walked down the hall. And it is a cardinal sin, criminal, punishable by the most extreme, to lose your weapon as a Marine. To get up and walk away from your weapon, to be further than one arm's reach from your rifle. And it makes sense, because if you don't have it, who does? The enemy. Like, well, you don't know. You can't have guns just laying around. So to get up and walk, I got to go to the restroom, and you're like, oh crap, you can quick grab your rifle, because you're like, man, that was close. I'm going to get crushed, because those drill instructors, those bad guys, used to crush recruits for leaving their weapon. So it's burned into you. And just the other day, I got up out of the hotel room. I think I actually had my CPAP bag on my shoulder all day as we were traveling.
That's right.
And I took it off and went in the room, and I got up and walked a few steps, and I was like, where's my weapon?
But the feeling, that deep feeling in your stomach.
Oh, huge
right?
panic. It's I mean, it's really like, like if you almost get hit by lightning or something, it's like,
yeah.
I almost lost my weapon.
So let's talk about the training aspect of it, because that's exactly what the Marine Corps is good at, training you to go in and do your job in different skill sets. And the skill set that is necessary is a very violent skill set and taking other people's lives. Let's talk about mixed martial arts. What happens when you start training mixed martial arts, right? You train it. Let's say you're training a certain kick or a certain punch or a certain evasive tactic or technique. You train it to the point where it becomes instinct. Your body knows it faster than the mind. The mind does not even need to recognize and make a decision. Your body moves. Your body moves and responds, right?
Yeah.
That is the same way the Marine Corps trains you. And so what happens is the body, it now becomes the mind. We did this in shooting courses. I forget the gentleman's name. He's one of the best shooters in the world. But I went and took his pistol course, and when I got there, I thought I knew pistol shooting. But one of the biggest things they preached and the way they taught was, you have to shoot. You shoot faster than you can think. Right? It all comes down to the body. So it's just it's that repetitive conditioning, stress inoculation, and so. When you naturally see these situations, your mind does not have to make a conscious decision. Your body reacts. This is exactly what is happening. And so there's a separation between the mind and the body.
Oh, yeah.
I see something safe. I'm walking into a sushi restaurant, right? This is absolutely safe in New Orleans, and I'm with a good-looking girl. This is perfectly safe. But the noises, the sounds, the smells, it just becomes so overwhelming. I get hyper aroused. My mind is telling me to relax. My body is ready to get out the door. Right? So if you go talk to my wife and you talked about our social life for, the decade that we've been together, there's probably one or two places that we would go. It was very refined, and it was very quiet, and it was very controllable. And so for someone once upon a time that said, hey, follow me, let's go, and just like yourself did exceptional things, I can't even walk in a fucking sushi restaurant, right? I couldn't show up for Thanksgiving because of macaroni, because of some of the things that I've seen. Macaroni just threw me to another dimension, and I would stop showing up to family get-togethers. My mom was a hell of a cook. She always made the macaroni, but I didn't. How can you tell somebody that you're afraid of macaroni? That doesn't even it doesn't sit with me. I can't accept that.
Right.
But I could not. You can't deny what is going on with you. And so, through this process, you start looking at it. Our mind is a record of the past. In order to move and create a new future, we have to be able to alleviate and to let go of the past. Otherwise, it's just going to be a predictable future. That's exactly where we've been living, Joe, on a fucking hamster wheel.
Right.
It never stops. It never stops. And you show up, and they give you the pharmaceuticals. You know what it does? It makes that son of a bitch go faster. It's insane. It's insane. And we just had this conversation that the best highly trained professionals in the world, the specialists with the white coats, they're killing us.
Yeah.
They're killing us.
I reached 13 medications that kept me on the couch most of the day. Zombie. But that was okay. A lot of the physical manifestations were gone, but I didn't have the energy. Like, my biggest accomplishment of the day was getting up the stairs before I soiled myself to the bathroom. I made it. And that's my quality of life. That's what I get for all those medications. That's the best we can do.
Yeah. Talk to me about 2021.
Okay.
That was a difficult year for you.
It was. Things, and I've put thought into. I've looked back to try to find out what happened.
Now this is 14 years after.
Yeah, and
the symptoms started.
Yeah, I'm 54 now, so it was 53. I'm getting old.
You're young.
I am, but I've been just hanging. I mean, if you were to imagine being in a tug of war and you're the anchor man, you know what that feels like when you're pulling with all your might, digging in and you're turned around the other way and you're gritting your teeth and you're just pulling with everything. That's how I got through the last 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
It's a shame that somebody like yourself, who provided that service to this country at such an exceptional level, you have to deal with this bullshit for 15 years because the Western model of medicine does not teach the methods and the practices and the modalities that we need to truly come home. It's totally opposite. And not only is it opposite, it exacerbates the conditions, right? You look at, since I've been out the Marine Corps, in the best shape of my life, right? Hypertension, high blood pressure, asthma, pre-diabetic. Just slow it down. Hypertension. Your body is too tense. Why are they giving me fucking Adderall? Right? And if you look at the side effects of Adderall, high blood pressure, hypertension, it's insane. You telling me you paid $500,000 to go to medical school, and this is the best you can do?
Yeah.
I think as a medical community, I think they definitely need to start looking within. They're killing us, Joe.
I know.
They're killing us.
I don't know. Maybe that saves money.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that. It'd be better if I just. I mean, you squeeze the turnip. There's no more blood in it. We're done with it. We have an obligation to give him something if he shows up at our doorstep. So let's give him something. But has there ever been a point in time when somewhere within the big machine that was promised to always be there for me, where I felt like they're giving me everything they've got? No.
That's right. And you know what? That's a great perspective for people to hear, because it is just a natural assumption they're going to dump this much money into me to be this person and serve this cause. So when I get out, I'm going to surrender and turn my health over to those who have been entrusted with my care, through the Veterans Administration, and eventually became the private practices. But they are products of the Western model of medicine who do not address the fundamental needs of the human experience that are creating these conditions. What if we reduced that tension and we were not hypertense anymore?
Right.
I wouldn't have the asthma.
And I want to make
wouldn't
clear.
be pre-diabetic. It wouldn't be the continuing constant release of glucocorticoids into our system, right? Because you think about what happens with the stress response going into the fight, Joe. When we go into fight or flight, our body takes the things that we need and takes all the reserves and gives us everything we need to get through whatever that obstacle is.
Yeah, right.
And it shuts off the things that we don't need, right? The things we need are the adrenaline, the cortisol, the glucocorticoids, the glutamine into our bloodstream that gives us the energy. Our vessels and our blood pressure, elevates, and all the blood comes through the central organs. And that is the human stress response. What happens if we can't turn that stress response off?
And that's it. We're never back inside the wire.
The blood pressure doesn't come down.
Right.
The glucocorticoids do not stop getting released. And that is exactly what's happening to our body. And so even today, sitting with the professionals, sitting with the white coats, sitting with the doctors, take this pill, take this pill, take this pill. Nobody's ever talks about stress. I actually asked the doctor, pre-diabetic, have you ever heard of stress-induced diabetes, right? Because she said, this is a number I'm concerned with, right? You're pre-diabetic right now. She says, what I would do is, if you eat noodles, eat half a serving. If you eat rice, eat half a serving. Like, you fucking kidding me? You know how clean I eat? Right? And I asked her, I said, have you heard anything about stress-induced diabetes? And she said, yeah, I've heard about it here and there, but nothing. That is the answer. That is the answer. And it's not even a conversation within those halls. It blows my mind. It's very passionate to me because I see people like yourself, Joe. And I think the audience might see here shortly when, explain how you and I reunited. And I'm going to share the Joe that I met that day, standing by your barbecue pit on your back porch. That was not a good Joe. And take people like yourself. And you've been doing this for 14 years. And this is still the answers we're getting. This is still the answers we're getting. We've lost twice as many veterans. We've lost twice as many military personnel to suicide than we did in the entire Vietnam War. That's over 120, 130,000 individuals who have taken their life. We've lost 7,000 people, a little over 7,000 service members of combat. We've lost over 130,000 to suicide in that same period of time. And we're still having the same conversations. The fuck is going on, man?
And the wave's not over. I mean, it's like you would think, oh, well, the war's over now. Why are we still... No, the war is not over.
No.
The war is not over. And there are people out there, like I said, I'm on, I don't know what year, 14, 15, 16, something like that, of just hanging in there. There are people that just had their experience 4 years ago. Well, they're just getting started.
Well, the best... And this is what makes me the most angry, right? Not only is it our guys, 7 out of 10 Americans experience trauma in their lives.
Yeah.
The other 3 out of 10 live with someone who does. So it doesn't matter if it's childhood sexual trauma or combat trauma. Trauma is trauma, and the physical manifestations, the symptom clusters, the results of trauma misdiagnosed and untreated or treated improperly is all the same. And you want to see what happens when you stay on that path? You look at the veteran community and where we are right now. We're in a crisis. But we want to keep fucking dumping money into research, right? Right. There's a lot of things that are fundamentally wrong here. And the reason we have created our organization is to be that disruptive model and do just like you and I are doing and have been doing. And the retreat that we just went on is we're going to teach them how to do it themselves.
Right.
We don't have to sit with the white coats, man.
It's and this will be revealed later. I'm so mindful of how I feel right now.
Me too.
To talk through all this. I couldn't do this a few days ago. I couldn't go through that. I could not go through the history that I just gave you. And I'm probably only nervous about talking into a microphone and having a camera on me than I am about talking about my experiences.
Yeah. So let's go to 2021, August of 2021,
yeah,
right?
So, I was working.
I was standing in front of the White House.
Oh, okay. So, my phone rang, and it was Gary. And I'm like, oh, I got to take this.
Where were you?
I was at physical therapy on a table with needles in my neck, trying to get my pain level back down to a manageable 4. Degeneration in the cervical spine, completely exploded by hypertension, hypervigilance, tension, muscle knots, just everything was just so knotted up, and those nerves were just, arm was numb, couldn't turn my head, firing down my back, the pain was excruciating. And that's on top of everything else. Like, this is like the final symptom. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I said, hey, let me call you in just a minute. And I got done with physical therapy. I got outside. I called Gary. And he said, how you doing, man? He's like, you're never going to guess where I am. He told me he was at the Capitol doing great work. And he says, how you doing? I said, Gary, if it was anybody else, I would give the response that I've given for a long time now. I'm good, man. I'm good. I said, I'm not good. I'm not good at all. And he was supposed to fly back home that day, and he said, can I come up visit you for a couple of days? I said, please. And he canceled his flight, got an Uber ride, and there he was.
And when I'm telling you, it was straight out of John Rambo, where the guy gets out the cab and shows up at the house, and there's this little, there's this house on a prairie, and I walk back, and we walk in and walk to the backyard, and Joe, he's got a beer in his hand, and he's standing, he's got the beer, it's sitting on your barbecue pit, and you're standing there, and I can see it in your face, and I can see the tension, and his hand starts shaking, and he says, you know what fucking got me? When they said they released the cameraman. I was talking about the explosion in Afghanistan when they were withdrawing. They said they released the fucking cameraman. And we knew what was going to happen. But I saw him. He was standing up in his backyard, and I'm just like, holy shit. He's still in it. He's never left. I was very, very extremely concerned, man. And
yeah, I was.
And coming from my perspective, I'm in a position, I just left our nation's capital. I was there for the first time inside of the Capitol. It was absolutely amazing. But what was ironic about it is I was talking about the medical benefits of weed, right? I'm like, the first time in my nation's capital,
right,
and I'm talking about the medical benefits of weed or cannabis. I end up having to call Joe, standing in front. I'm looking at the White House. I called Joe. I said, Joe, I hadn't talked to him in 12 years. Why? Because I was ashamed. This was an incredible leader that I admired, and I was ashamed of who I had become because of the struggle that I had gone through after service. And he says, not good. And I went and I sat, and I think I ended up staying there 3 days. I wanted everything, Joe, for you just to take that little one hitter and inhale, because I knew what it would do for you. I knew that it would reduce the hyperarousal in the amygdala. I knew that it would lead to hyperarousal in the prefrontal cortex. It would allow those two parts of the brain to start talking again, right? That is what's absolutely necessary for the learning process. Learning that things are safe again is a learning process, right? And so I knew it would take you out of it. It would also, it would reduce, it would bring balance to your primal functions: eating, sleeping, digestion, memory, emotion, arousal. I was already at the point where I decided not to shoot myself in the face, and I decided to smoke a joint. And it did everything that the medicines were supposed to do. And so I sold everything that I owned, and I locked myself in my garage for about a couple years. And I did not come out until I had the answers that I needed, that I knew, that I could tell my own father. Because for me, it was the integrity issue, right? If I said marijuana growing up, my father would beat my ass.
Right.
And so this was a drug. You were a non-performer. But in reality, I used cannabis through a series of microdosing that became a performance enhancer for me, both proactively and reactively. Reactively, I knew how I could utilize it. I knew that if I was triggered, if I started feeling the hyperarousal, which I did, that's the way I lived, I could integrate this medicine at a small dose that would allow me to be in the present, in order to perform. It was the only thing that got rid of my migraines. It's the only thing that allowed me to eat and rid of the GI disorder or the discomfort in the mornings. And so I started integrating it on a daily basis, and both reactively and proactively. So even now, those things, once I gained confidence in this plan as a medicine, those situations that I knew were known triggers for me, I would inhale prior. Right, and I inhaled because it didn't take 45 to an hour and 15 minutes for my body to metabolize it, and depending on what I ate would really dictate how I experienced that medicine. So the inhalation was what gave me the consistency. And so going into these trigger situations like crowded places or airports, or having conversations with my spouse about some very emotional things, and kind of shedding perspective and processing emotion and walking through those triggers, I was able to integrate cannabis prior to that and produce good outcomes in situations that generally produce bad outcomes. So now what was I doing? I was training my body, right? My mind knew this was safe, but when I went into this situation, my body didn't. It went the opposite direction. So what if I could sit in these emotions and produce a different outcome? And that's what started happening, is now in these bad situations that I was avoiding, I was now proactively putting myself in them and producing better outcomes. This was retraining my body. And that, when I started doing that, and I started seeing that if I controlled neurotransmission, right, the adrenaline and the cortisol, if I could shut off that HPA axis, I could start to control the outcomes on the right side of the equation that people see: family, relationships, social integration, occupation, professionalism, your spirituality, right? So if I can control the left side of the equation, I can get better outcomes on the right side of the equation. And so cannabis was not a way to avoid. It was not a way to escape. It was a way for me to become functional and to reintegrate and start producing better outcomes. It was absolutely undeniable. So when I sat with you that day, you wouldn't. Your integrity was there. You wouldn't.
I was still working.
You were still serving.
Still under a clearance. And even though I had not been to work in a while, I was on a medical leave of absence. I still, I signed an agreement that I wouldn't do that.
From your perspective, is it something you wanted to try?
I did. I was desperate.
I
was desperate for something, anything, particularly to hear him talk about the pain relief.
You believed him,
and to be able to still absolutely.
Yeah.
We went right in through the gates together.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
So I absolutely trusted and believed him. I could not.
And I wouldn't, and I didn't.
No,
I didn't ask to push. I didn't.
Nope, you did not.
Joe was Joe. Joe makes the right decision.
Yeah.
But
I had to do it the right way.
When was the Georgia trip? What month was that?
July.
So you talk, he waited a year, and you were at the highest level, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, show pictures, but you were beating yourself up at night. It was incredibly painful just for me to watch.
Yeah. And a big part of my issue is the dreams, and that's where it would really, there was all the manifestations physically during the day, but the minute I closed my eyes and I would see that pillow, I'm like, oh, what do you got in store for me tonight? And I could watch 6 hours of Care Bears and unicorns and eat cotton candy and all that before I go to bed, and everything goes really dark. And so then I'm having these nightmares. I wake up multiple times, my heart's racing. I wake up and I instantly throw up, and then I have diarrhea, and then I drink coffee to try to wake myself up to get through the next day. And that was my downward spiral, and it just got worse and worse and worse, and I became exhausted.
How many medications were you taking at this time?
I hit 13 was my number.
13.
Yeah,
you might have had a couple extra ones the day I took a picture of you, because I want to remember you had 15 bottles sitting in front of you.
Maybe.
How many of those can you think fondly about? Like that one was awesome.
None. No, none. Nope.
So, the question of the day. What does it take for the practitioners who are prescribing these medicines to listen to the fucking patients?
And I thought about that, and particularly when it came down to some of the individual people that were working with me. There were some beautiful people, and I don't fault them. Because if they could, they probably would.
They would. It's not the people.
They're in the confines of what they're capable of doing.
They're incredible people.
I bet there were people that would love to say, here's your cannabis. Here's how you use it. Go home and get a good night's sleep. If they could, but they can't.
That's right.
Because it's the machine that they fall under that they're bound. Their hands are tied.
That's right. That's right. They're not, and I'm glad you clarified that, because it's not the people. Those people are incredible, right? They chose that path to be the healers, to be that. They're taught.
Yeah,
it's
or
been
they
taught
have rules.
For a long time.
They're bound by rules and regulations too.
That's right. Yeah. And so as the national community continues to push the real evidence that cannabis actually is a medicine, and they've shoved it down for a long time. Why? Because what happens when I am hypertense and I have diabetes and I have asthma and I have high blood pressure, do you think any doctor has talked to me about a strategy to get off of these medications? No. So that creates a very profitable model for them. And if you want to hear something really funny, you know what creates this? The causes the asthma and the hypertension? It's the adrenaline and the cortisol that our bodies are releasing because of those subconscious triggers that are setting that switch off, right? You know what they treat us with? Adrenaline and cortisol. That is what is within those asthma inhalers. It's absolutely insane. It makes no sense. Yeah. And so you never get off the hamster wheel, ever. But it's profitable. And those profitable dollars are what sit and are dumped into the lobbying efforts that control the policies that are created that either allow or prevent access to natural plant medicines to use as a medicine. But what you're seeing now, Baton Rouge Fire Department, right? It's legal in Louisiana. Baton Rouge Fire Department, 25 years this gentleman has been in. He has a legal recommendation, but they just did a random drug test. Now they're about to take his entire pension and everything from him. We're still dealing with this stupid bullshit. Yeah. He is forced to take the pharmaceuticals. He's forced to take them. That's insane. I wish I could start a business and set some laws and say, you know what? You have to do this. I don't care what you think. You're going to pay me to do this.
There's a lot of really incredible veterans who are in those organizations too that can't access this medicine.
Right. Yeah.
Who have done the right thing.
Yeah. And I was on that. That's where I was. I was a veteran that went into a government job. And even if I didn't have a clearance, I was still a government employee, and I could not do that.
Yeah. Talk to me about
my first experience.
Georgia.
Yeah, you bet.
So let me set it a little bit. So,
sure.
So Joe calls, and we have a veteran retreat that we're going to. The group that served together in Iraq, and this is almost a year, right? He chose not to integrate for another year. Let me back it up a little bit. What month did we go to Bethesda? We have to share that story, buddy.
Yeah, you're right. That whole thing is a big fog. I couldn't.
It was probably 8 months.
I'm thinking it was January, February. I think
That's right.
Yeah, something like that.
That's right. And so,
and I had given up. I was done. I'm like, I need to get checked in to the emergency room. I need to go into a ward where they can give me some of the heaviest, whether it's a sedative or whatever. I need to be able to sleep
to rest,
to turn my brain off for just a night or two.
That's it. That's all you wanted to do.
Asking for, and I didn't even mention the drinking that I had started doing to try to at least not remember the dreams when I woke up. Let them be fuzzy from the alcohol, so that my daughter dying in my arms, or seeing my son or somebody that I love getting. It was never a dream about remembering Iraq or the Gulf War. It was always about somebody close to me that I love is hurt badly, and it's my fault because I missed it. I just didn't catch it.
You showed up right after.
I didn't see the danger coming. I just missed it. And it was always my fault. But they're still alive. They're saying, "Daddy, help me."
That's right.
"Daddy, help me." And I'm looking at this broken body, knowing I can't fix this. So yeah, those are my. But those were my dreams.
It's so vivid, right?
Oh.
Because when you're there, you see it, you feel it, you smell it. For me, it was my nephew Hayden. When I came home, he was run over by a dump truck, right? And I saw what was going to happen. I couldn't get to him, but I was the first one on the scene.
Yeah.
To grab him and to hold him, and it was. This was my nephew, and I loved him with everything I had, and that's what started transpiring. Is those things that I loved became the next catastrophic thought. Right?
Absolutely.
I saw my mom coming over the bridge. Before I saw my mom in a vehicle, I saw a truck with pipes on the back of it. What did my mind put together? My mother, one of the pipes came off, and my mother was impaled. I was the first one on the scene, and I had a very real conversation many times with my mother who was dying, and it's very grotesque, and the smell of blood is always present in those thoughts.
Yeah.
So
Bethesda. Yeah, I wanted to get checked in. Gary said he wanted to be there with me. And I really appreciated that, because even just going to a doctor or hospital, going anywhere, it took courage for me to just get outside the door. We got to Bethesda, and we got there and filled out all the forms and everything. What seems to be the problem. Yeah.
And he told him.
Yeah.
I looked at Joe. I said, just be honest with him, Joe. Right? We're here asking. We just need a rest. This is what's going on with me. Surely 20 years after this conflict started, they have better answers.
How much hope did you guys have going in there?
This is Bethesda. This is the premier provider.
This is the national hospital.
Yeah.
The national hospital for our veterans, right? And so we go in, and Joe tells him what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I spent over an hour talking to the psychiatrist about everything, and she said, "I think that you need to stay here a few days, and we can get you some help and some rest." And I said, "Thank you so much." And she walked out.
She never came back.
Right, and
she sent the aide.
A young person in uniform came in and said, "You need to know what this means before you sign this." I'm like, "Okay." She said, "You're going to be in the psych ward. There's people up there dealing with all kinds of different stuff. And we're going to take away all of your belongings, your phone, your clothes. You will have no contact with anybody until we let you." And I'm like, "For how long?" She says, "We're going to keep you until we feel it's safe to release you." I said, "So wait a minute. I just spent an hour plus telling that psychiatrist that was just in here that I am in fully switched on fight or flight mode, and you're going to put me in a cage and take away my ability to communicate with anybody?" I said, "That makes no sense to me. Give me my clothes back." give me my clothes back. We're done here. And she's okay. And then they waited, and they're like, well, you know, and I'm like, and so now the place that I ran to as a last hope has betrayed me and wants to put me in a prison cell.
Yes.
Not even a PTSD ward that doesn't exist.
Right.
Just some psych ward.
You're not at some retreat center in the woods.
Just some psychological. And she said, there's people up there dealing with some pretty heavy. So I'm like, no, I just am trying to get some rest.
You just used
a break.
The right words. They betrayed you.
They did.
That's exactly what they did.
Absolutely.
The National Hospital, and one of the highest esteemed veterans who ever walked through the Corps. They fucking betrayed you, Joe.
But it gets better. Because I also told her about all the pain that I'm dealing with in my neck, in my back. And I said, I'm in constant pain. And that is just pushing. Like, if it's bad going on, what's with everything else, that pain is destroying me. And the pain medicine that I have is not doing it. When they did decide to give me my clothes back and my phone, because I was going to walk, I said, look, keep playing. I'll walk out of here naked. I do not care. And then I'll sue you for my stuff back or something. I'll send somebody else to get. So I'm not playing. You don't understand how I'm feeling right now. I'm leaving. And I said, you know, you can't help me with this. You can't help me with the pain and anything. She came back in. I wouldn't even call it a Dixie cup. It was a cup of water, more like a little tiny shot glass, and a 600 milligram Motrin. And she said, "Here, this should help."
Yeah. So we went to the.
I've been eating like 1,800 milligrams of Motrin a day to try to get me down to a 6. And she gave me a 600 milligram Motrin. I know they've got 800 milligram Motrins in the hospital. She couldn't even get.
They even shorted you on the Motrin.
She couldn't even get. And I just said, "This is one for the books." Unbelievable.
Insane. 20 years after the war started. 20 years. We had already lost 120,000 veterans, and this was the answer from the National Hospital.
Yeah.
That's a shame. That is a shame. So let's go to February, March, July.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. So,
July in Georgia.
With Gary in Georgia, there's a lot of Marines there. There's a lot of memories. There's a lot of conversations. And I'm still not in a good place. But fortunately, Gary and I got a place, a rental on a lake that was just a quiet place so I could bounce in and out of, because I can't do a lot of people at one time. I won't say I can't do a lot of people at one time. I couldn't do a lot of people at one time. And it was tough because the men do draw to me. I do love them, and they do feel loved by me, and they all wanted to talk to me at the same time. And it was hard, and I struggled, and at one point we weren't there long, and I said, we need to leave. Can we go back? I'm sorry to cut this short, but can we go back to the room or the cottage on the lake? And we did, and I looked at Gary and I said, I'm ready, because I can't do this. And he had some cannabis. I'm a cigarette smoker, so I'm thinking, well, if I can smoke cigarette, I can smoke cannabis, right? My experience with cannabis had been maybe 2 times when I was a 16-year-old kid, and I don't know, it was probably ragweed, something somebody was growing in their backyard. I don't even know what it was. It felt a little fuzzy, whatever. And, I took one, smoked it, and I took a hit of it like a cigarette.
And you hit the clock.
Well, I did. I had my phone. I said I really wanted to kind of see how this would affect me. I hit the timer on my phone, and I took a hit like a cigarette, and Gary was like, whoa, give that back. And I was like, oh. And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's what you see people on TV. That's how they do it. They take a big hit. They make rings and stuff and do all this cool thing. And I just took a big hit, and he's like, give that back. Okay, let's let's just take a minute. And, you know, Gary approached it with such love. And he really did not want my first experience to be too intense for me. Because obviously I'm going to be very sensitive to it. I've never used it. And he wanted to make sure that it was just a easy, gradual experience. And I looked at my phone at 4 minutes. I sat up and I practiced yoga, mindful meditation. I understand how to do a body scan, and I did a scan. And I said, Gary, for the first time since I can't tell you, I cannot find any pain in my body at all. At all. This is a man that's been paying out of pocket to get needles in his neck once or twice a week to try to get me to a 4. And I said, I'm pain free. And I smiled. I said, I am pain free. I can't find it anywhere. That was at like 4 minutes. About 6 minutes, I said, ooh. I said, feel like somebody like laid one of those weighted blankets on me. Yeah, I feel like cozy. It was at 6 minutes. It was probably 8 or 9 minutes. I said, I need to go to bed now. And he said, go, you do that, Joe, you go. And I said, I'm all set up, Gary. I said, I feel this. And it was on top of the exhaustion.
Yeah.
I was completely exhausted. And I crawled into bed, and I put my CPAP on, and I sleep with a neck brace as well. It keeps my neck immobilized while I sleep. I look like some cyborg or Frankenstein. I got all this stuff going on. And I have to have music or something playing because it helps to distract.
The tinnitus.
My mind, yep, for the tinnitus and the ringing, but also gives my mind something to think about to keep it distracted so it doesn't go into the darkness. And I slept 10 and a half hours.
Wow.
I was concerned.
Wow.
Out.
I would go by his bed. I'm like, yeah, he's breathing.
I cannot sleep when it's light out. At first light, even at pre-dawn, I'm awake because I'm programmed to do that. I cannot sleep when it's light out. It's hard for me to nap during the day. 15, 20 minutes, that's it, and I'm up. I can't do it. I don't even know what time I got up. I know it was light out.
Didn't matter.
I was out 10 and a half hours. And I said, oh my God, I feel so rested. And then we went and sat by the lake. He said, come here. And I had my coffee. And
next morning,
he had it different. He said, this is something different. This is a day strain. I'm like, well, I didn't even know there was strains. I thought cannabis was cannabis. That's it. And he's like, no, this is different.
Got a strain in my neck.
And I learned, and I learned, okay, well, they got a little, go easy here, just a little. And he said, now blow it out. He wanted to make sure that he saw some smoke come out. And he goes, good, that was good. And we sat there, and I just felt it wash over me, and I said, this is so pleasant. Because when you flew up to see me, I was raw, bleeding nerves. And I watched you smoke some cannabis, and I'm thinking, well, there goes the visit. So much for a cognizant conversation from here on out.
Yeah.
And he smoked cannabis, and I watched him look at me and have the most sincere, coherent, thoughtful, educated conversation. I was the one that wasn't making any sense. He was completely present, having an intelligent conversation. And when he would go to say something, he would think about it. He was being mindful of his words. It wasn't just blabbing. It was thoughtful, mindful, loving sentences that were meaningful. And I'm like, that's somebody that's high?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be like, hey, throwing his shirt around and picking fake apples out of trees and stuff. Right? I'm like, no. And then he's like, there's different strains and there's different ways to treat for different things. And I learned that there was a night strain that that's my thing. That's how cannabis works for me. It's the smallest amount, even still. 1 or 2 puffs, and I'm on a 10-minute window to get my CPAP on, my neck brace, and get in bed and put my solfeggio frequencies on and my Zen music, and I'm out.
Have you ever seen Jerry Maguire?
Yeah.
The little kid, when the mom comes home, I got to go to bed. I got to go to bed. That's Joe when he inhaled. I got to go to bed.
But it's part of your routine now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not even, sometimes I sleep so well that the next night, like I haven't made it habitual.
Yeah.
And my
finding recovery.
My eldest daughter will say, she's like, Daddy, she's in her late 20s and about ready to give me my first grandbaby. And
awesome.
She says, Daddy, when's the last time you smoked your medicine? I'm like, you know what? I didn't smoke last night. Thank you. I am going to smoke tonight because I don't need to have a bad night's sleep in order to remind me to smoke cannabis to have a good night's sleep. Why would I put myself through that?
That's right.
If I miss a day or two, that's okay, but let's not miss it 3 days. Let's not make it 4 days or to a day where I'm going backwards. Yeah, so she and they know.
We might be jumping ahead, but have you seen a reduction in the pharmaceuticals?
I'm on blood pressure medicine.
That's it. That's it?
That's it.
What else?
Still take Motrin sometimes because of my back.
Yeah, so 13.
But that's normal. That's not like a daily medication.
So you 13 to 15 medications.
Yes, and I asked to come off of them. I did not want to live that way anymore. And when I said that I was integrating cannabis and other
holistic
alternatives, she said, I think it's a good idea that we do.
Who is she?
So good story. I had a significant fallout in 2014 that was similar to this one. So this is not new. Like, this is not, he just hit his. No, it's been up and down the whole time. This one just, I think I equate it to being older. I lost my endurance. I could not just hang in there anymore.
Yeah.
But in 2014, I had one, and working through the military and through TRICARE, I was given a place for a psychologist, and she was amazing. She was really good. She was not in the military or in the TRICARE system. It was outside, but she was in the network. She worked with me and with EMDR and some other things that helped me to kind of understand how my brain was doing things with my soul and my body. And she's very zenned out, and that's why she was probably just the right person.
On the same wavelength as you.
Absolutely, yeah. And we really had a strong connection. She's a beautiful, beautiful person. And then I felt like I had healed a lot through that in 14, and then I said, I think I'm in a good place now. And then so then fast forward, I had this, and I had we're going to send you this place, we're going to send, and I learned. I think I had such a finality that they would give me the number to a psychiatrist or psychologist who was going to call me, and I would talk to them for 10 minutes. And just by the nature of their questions or what they were saying or how they were talking to me, I said, you know what? You're right. I'm healed. You're amazing. Thank you so much. We're done. Click. No, I will not be talked to that way. I will not be lessened. This will not be made light of. I've just told you that I have suicidal thoughts, that I'm at the end. I don't think I can put it in any other words. I don't want to be here anymore, and you're going to try to put me on the schedule for next month sometime, or no. Yeah. So I found the psychologist that I'd worked with back in 2014. She's not even in this country anymore, but she is still licensed to provide in certain states within the United States, and I was fortunate enough to be in one of them. And I reached out, and she said, oh, my God, Joe, absolutely, but I'm not in network. I said, I don't care. I will exhaust my savings. And she's a little expensive. but she helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And she was the one very in tune with my needs. And I've got medications from TRICARE and through that and from her. And she was very cautious to put me on lower doses and work with me. And when I told her that I wanted to pursue holistic alternatives and that these medications were just making me a lethargic zombie and that was not a quality of life for me, she said, well, let's take you off of these two and then let's regroup next week and see how I did, and then take you off of these, and I'm okay with you not taking that because that was an on or off one in crisis mode. And we got myself pretty quickly down to my blood pressure medicine.
That's awesome.
So she gave you a really great exit strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
And I've got another follow-up with her, I think, next week or the following week.
I don't know if I've ever heard of somebody execute an exit strategy quite like that. Yeah. Typically, it just kind of happens in over time reductions. But man, that's amazing.
It's probably why she left the United States.
Yeah. So yeah,
because she was bound
Western model
in a certain way.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, good for her. What about the? What were her thoughts on cannabis use?
She said, "I am supportive of anything that you use as a tool to move forward."
Boom.
If anything that she's like, I mean, anything, there are options out there, all kinds of holistic options. And as long as what you're using is moving you forward in life.
That's right.
And not backwards.
That's
in
right.
an abusive way. Absolutely. And she's like, I can't wait to hear about it.
That's
and
awesome.
I haven't talked to her because there's been some treatments that have kind of been on again, off again on the calendar. It's been a while since I've worked with her, and I'm on with her, I think, next week.
Yeah,
and I'm excited.
I want to make a point there for people who are listening. If you're dealing with a practitioner and you bring up cannabis as a holistic alternative to start integrating, into your healthcare continuum, if there is a physician, practitioner, doctor that does not even entertain that conversation, you should find another one, because the truth is just like you said, it's about patient outcomes. And if we can improve patient outcomes with natural holistic plant medicine, they should at minimum hear it, entertain it, consider it. But someone just like my psychiatrist did would not even have a conversation about it.
Wow.
Where is the ignorance? How does the ignorance of that professional get in the way of the patient?
It just makes the stigma wall even higher, too. It's like, okay, well, maybe she's right. Maybe this should not be entertained.
What if you said chamomile tea? Would that have been different?
I don't know. I've never had it.
Chamomile tea is an herb.
I thought you said camel milk.
No, chamomile. Chamomile tea is an herb. It's a plant.
I didn't want to milk the bull.
Yeah, we'll hit the edit on that one.
I mean, what's the difference between chamomile tea and cannabis? They both are plant medicines that treat symptoms.
There you go.
Chamomile tea helps you sleep.
Yeah.
So does cannabis.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. The FDA is now cracking on homeopathic medicines because there's such a surge to the homeopathic medicines, natural plant medicines to help treat. And now they're putting out like FDA advisories and restricting even the uses of these, right? So they can continue to pump the pharmaceuticals. That all starts at the lobbying level, so the pharmaceutical companies can, create that playing field that we have to play on. With that said, Joe, we use cannabis to manage our stress response. Is that a safe statement? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Now that we're managing our stress response, both proactively and reactively.
I mean, and that stress response is in my dreams. It's in my nightmares. I've wear the Whoop device. I've seen where I have a nightmare and my heart rate shoots from 56 beats a minute to 120 in seconds. That's my nightmare.
While you're sleeping.
In my sleep.
That's right.
Sometimes it wakes me up. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I just wake up with bile in my throat and I have to go throw up and I feel sick to my stomach. And it takes me a minute to remember. And I'm like, oh, right. That's right. I was in a nuclear wasteland and I saw those bodies. Now I remember what the dream was.
Yeah. Let me ask you real quick. How were you able to see that heart rate while you were sleeping?
Because
Go ahead, drop it, buddy.
You have so kindly provided me with a Whoop device,
yes,
which is a biomonitor that it knows when I go to sleep. I don't have to set anything. It just knows when I go to sleep, and it knows when I wake up, and it tells me the quality of my sleep and how much recovery I had, where my waking points were, when I was in a light sleep, when I was in REM, and when I was in a deep sleep, which is different from REM. And I can see my heart rate throughout the night, and I can see if there were spikes. I can see and I can see, 1:30, there's a spike in my heart rate, and it says that I was awake. I remember getting up to go to the bathroom at that time. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And while you're sleeping, you go from 68 beats per minute to 130. And for the longest time, right, this is critically important because you get up in the morning. This is every day for you,
and I don't know what the hell happened or
That's
why
right.
I feel so sick
That's
in my
right.
stomach. Yeah.
Now this gives us a tangible graphic that we can.
Yes.
This is PTSD, right?
I remember telling you, like the first time it happened, I said, do you know what it means to me to be able to wake up sick to my stomach, throwing up, diarrhea, exhausted? Sometimes my eyes are swollen almost shut. And to pull up my phone and see my nightmare on this Whoop device and know, okay.
This is real.
I can see what happened. At least I know I had a nightmare because I don't remember it, but it happened, or it'll start to sink in. That's right. I do remember that.
Now, with the Whoop device, we can see the trigger. We can see what happens to our body when it is triggered, right?
Yeah.
Now it's not just a mythical PTSD, right? Oh, you have PTSD. It's like a shirt you wear. You walk around with it.
Yeah.
You got it now.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it. Now you can physically, there's tangible evidence to show you what your body is doing. And it goes back to our mind is on one stage and our body is on the other. But nobody, even the doctors, can't explain this to us.
Right.
Now we have a biometric device that not only measures the quality of your sleep, but it also measures daily strain, with the core focus being on our cardiovascular and our pulmonary system. And if you think about the stress response and the activation of our HPA axis and the allostatic load that is carried over time, it's all based on our pulmonary function, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so our breath, correct. And so that using the Whoop was created by Olympic athletes to measure their strain instead of using steps. This takes the internal physiology of humans and creates, through their algorithm, a strain. 1 being the least, 21 being the max. It also measures HRV, the heart rate variability, which shows the balance between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. So what happens when you're in fight or flight or PTSD and you have a HPA axis in overdrive? You are constantly in a sympathetic nervous response. It is your sympathetic nervous system activated. When that is activated, the parasympathetic is not. So you take everything that you need, like the sugar and adrenaline and the cortisol, and that's what stays in your body, becomes neurotoxic. And then the things you don't need, like sleep and digestion and reproduction, stay shut off, right? And so there's a clear imbalance that is causing your body to react in the way that it does. And we're able to capture this on the Whoop. And not only if we can measure it, we can manage it. And that's what we're doing. And so with this philosophy, we started integrating cannabis to manage the stress response with the whole goal of getting to the root of the problem. And this takes us into where we were last week, right? The root of the problem lies so deep within us, right? It's not in our conscious. The triggers are in our, sometimes in our subconscious. And then there's the unconscious. And so when we get into the psychedelics are the railroad to the unconscious, where the real problems lie with us. This is never a conversation you're going to have with a doctor that falls within the Western model. A lot of this is Eastern practice.
Right.
And so we took a journey, both Joe and I, and it was scary to say the least. And we found life change, hands down, without a doubt. Yeah. There's absolutely no denying it. And this thing tells a story as well.
Yeah, it really
of how that change has happened. Yeah. And you're talking to someone who is literally 2 days back from that healing journey, back into my normal culture, or my normal daily life, back into those that daily grind. And there's absolutely no mistaking that I am at peace right now. And I have not been here since 2005. It's absolutely insane. And I would ask you, can you please get into our experience and talk about that journey and what just transpired?
Absolutely. And, to begin by saying, for you to create, to find, discover, whatever you want to call it, to be my friend, my warrior partner, to include me, to say, hey, Joe, I found something. What do you think about this? And and it was awesome that initially you had introduced me to microdosing psilocybin, which I had amazing results from immediately. To take a small piece of chocolate bar of 0.23 grams and have no psychedelic effects whatsoever, with the exception of, boy, that sky is blue. Man, look how red that cardinal is. Gorgeous. That's it. The colors just seem a little brighter. But to start the day off with, it's going to be a great day. Yeah. What am I going to do today? I don't know. I'm going to do something fun.
Yeah.
And it was not that long ago when it was Wednesday and I could not see a future beyond Friday at all.
Yeah.
There was no future. It's going to end any minute now.
So what did that psilocybin allow you to do?
I saw a future. I started planting my garden. Well, a garden doesn't grow in 2 days. I was building for the future. I planted a garden with the intent of a harvest.
Wow.
I got excited about being a grandfather for the first time. That's coming up.
Incredible.
I started getting excited about what's going to happen in the future. Right. So, but I also knew that there was greater things that those medicines could do, but I didn't understand. I was very afraid to go beyond microdosing. And I wasn't afraid to never do it. I just didn't want to do it without it had to be in an intentional way, in a safe way. It needed to be medicinal. It needed to be used not as a recreational way, but as a medicinal way. And it needed to be ceremonial. That was important to me.
Yeah.
It needed to be if I was going to go inside, I needed it to be done the way that these plant medicines had been used
in the past,
time ago.
You need to be tribal.
Yes. And you happened upon that vehicle for us to do that, and they graciously got us on their calendar right away.
And so just to get into a little bit, and I'll let you talk through the experience, but what he is speaking of is we went on a psychedelic retreat, right? It's I call it psychedelic retreat. It was a healing retreat.
Healing center. It's a healing center.
It absolutely is a healing center. But what we did is we went and we participated in tribal ceremonies using some very powerful plant medicines as well as poisons from frogs. So we started with the combo session, which is a cleanse, where they burn the portals into your skin, just like they've done in ancient ceremonies for hundreds, thousands of years. And then they take the frog poison and they put it in these portals, and it cleans our bodies. And the second day, we went with a heavy dose of psilocybin under guided, very tribal ceremonial experience like they did in the past. And then the third day was the 5-MeO DMT, which is also the poison from the bufo toad, also known as the cane toad, which happens to be my son's favorite. He informed me this morning. And so those 3 days and the sequence of them, and Joe, I would love for you to share your experience, but I would say that beyond any doubt in my mind, beyond any doubt in this Whoop device, that life change has transpired.
Right. Absolutely.
Can you share your journey and talk to me about getting there the day prior, going through the combo, going through the psilocybin, and then going through the bufo?
I will do my best. There are things, I think, that we experience in life where people say, words just don't do it justice. Like, I can't find the words. I don't know that I can find the words to explain. And that's similar to where I'm at right now, and I'm going to do my best. But, we arrived at ATMA, the All Tribes Medical Assembly, and that's what it is. It is a church. Mm-hmm. And it is for holistic healing for everyone, for all tribes. And these beautiful people welcomed us with open arms, and they provided us with beautiful accommodations. And, we got into it right away, really quickly.
Right when we walked through the door.
Yeah, Danny and Whitney. And there was so much thought put into it, because Robert is the pastor of the church, and he was really adamant that there needed to be 2 holistic healers of the female gender supporting you and I. And he explained it to me. You are both alpha males. And he said there's so much history and science behind this, but I can't take the time right now to explain it to you. But he said, you are alpha males returning from war, from battle. And there was a time when tribes had the specific women that were set aside because of their amazing capacity to nurture not just the body but the spirit back to reintegrate
the warrior spirit.
Yes, and they did that feminine
container
gift that they have to do that was powerful. So Danny and Whitney were the 2 healers that worked with us, and we got into it fairly quickly. I'm going to screw up the names of the medicines, but the way that our package was structured was perfect. We started out with the Sananga, I believe, which is a Amazonian and a very old eye droplet, the eye drop of medicine, made up of certain plant-based herbs and medicines, and it burns. It was used to cleanse the eyes prior to going off on a hunt. It does burn. There's a lot of watering. And I realized that it was painful, and that was necessary. It wouldn't be the same if it did not provide that burning sensation. Now, us being Marines, we've been CS gassed more, riot control gas in the eyes more times than you can count. We know what it's like to have burning, teary eyes. And this was along those lines. Maybe it was like getting a direct shot of CS gas in the eye, right in the eyes. It did not last that long. Mm-mm. It did feel very cleansing.
Yes, it did.
And my vision was a lot clearer. I even was looking at something, reading something out back afterwards, and I realized that I didn't have my glasses on.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe I'm looking at that. That's really neat. So it did work. It made sense. And when they went on the hunt, when they were bringing food home, I'm sure they wanted their vision to be, because every arrow counts, every shot counts, every whatever it is they're using to capture that meal to feed their families, it was important that they were successful.
That's right.
The next therapy that we did was rape, also pronounced hape, I believe, and it is a ground tobacco mixture with other elements in it, and it's put into a kind of a pipe tube that has an elbow to it, and it's blown into the nasal cavity.
So they put it into your nostril, and then Danny or Whitney on the other end, they blow forcefully into it. I swear I thought somebody shot me through my nostril with a 22. Boom.
Now, because it's tobacco, I liked it. It
didn't come out the top, but it felt like something pierced right up here in this right rear lobe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy smokes.
Yeah, and it's intense. I mean, you feel it all over. This was also, it's another cleansing. And I'm a smoker. I was a heavy smoker. Now I'm a smoker. It's significantly reduced. But afterwards, I was like, I can breathe really well right now. Like I feel, not understanding that this day was all about cleansing and preparation for the next 2 days. I didn't grasp it. I just thought, we're just going to try all these different holistic things, really cool. And then afterwards, that prepared us for the combo, Kambo.
Comes from the combo frog.
Combo frog, and it is a venom or an excretion that comes from the frog. They don't kill the frog; they're able to excrete the extract from the frog. And but in order for it to be absorbed into the skin properly, they make very small burn marks on the skin, and they select the locations for those burn marks based upon, and I don't remember the name of it.
Very similar to the acupuncture chart.
Correct.
Right? And so to put this in perspective for those who are listening, for those who have, or firecrackers are legal in their states, they have the punks that they call them. It's the little brown, like cattail thing, and that you light them and they stay lit. So they had a punk-like material that they would, that they lit, had a red hot coal on the end of it, and they pre-mark it with a marker. And so we had different points. We had some points that were similar. We had different points that were chosen based on what our intentions were and what our conditions were. And so they take this little punk and they burn the skin where those marks were. And for myself, Joe, you got the Y a little lower on the stomach and the 2 points in the front. I went a little higher on the chest, and I had 2 points in the back, and the 2 points in the back were specifically tied to the liver, which is where anger is stored, which was my big intention, was I got to get out of anger as a default mode. And so these burn marks were used as the portals to allow the frog poison to be absorbed. So they would take these, they would roll it up with a knife or a blade on a piece of metal and roll it into balls, and they would set them right on the burn marks.
And it was fast. Within seconds of
Boom.
That being placed, you feel the local burning sensation on those, and then you feel it build, and it's amazing you don't realize how quickly that can course through your system.
I don't know if amazing is a word.
Well, it was impressive. Impressive.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And you feel it building. And prior to this, there were breathing exercises that they did with us, and a lot of communication and explanation as to what this is. Combo is a cleanse, and it is a cleanse and a purge used prior to the hunt for the men. But she also discussed fertility with the women, that was also something that was used, and I believe she said burns on the combo placement on the inside of the leg, the inner thigh, and it was used for fertility.
That's interesting you say that, right? When you dig into combo and the reasons people use combo, one of the things I found, a gentleman out of Israel, out of all the alternatives, combo was the modality of choice for him because he felt that it truly reset his HPA axis. And so when you talk about when you go into fight or flight, even from a simple trigger, your body uses what it needs, shuts off what it doesn't. Reproduction is one of those. So if you are continually in a state of stress or fight or flight, you are going to have imbalance and dysfunction in your reproductive system. So to hear that, they used it for female reproduction and the ability to, reduce the strain or to kind of shut down that HPA axis that's neat.
So prior to the medicine being placed, one of the things that we had to do was drink a significant amount of water. Hydration was a big part of it because this is a purge. This is a cleanse. The combo worked quickly. You begin, and there's beautiful music. There is the burning of sage. It's very ceremonial. Our healers were always in motion, working around us in ways that I can't explain, with sounds, with music, with medicine that I don't know what they're doing, but there's an intention in their eyes that they know exactly what they're doing. And you begin to feel the nausea. The more you practice the breathing they taught you, the faster the nausea comes, and then these quarts of water that you've been drinking, they come out. I cannot speak for Gary. I can tell you that what came out of my stomach was black like tar. And there was more retching, and more came out. And then there was an immediate, urgent look to my healer, Danny. I need to go to the bathroom right now. She gently escorted me to the restroom. She grabbed my bucket and took it with me, got me in there, set the bucket in front of me, and said, I will be right outside the door. All you have to do is make a noise, and I'm coming in. I said, okay.
Did you still have the frog wax on you?
Oh, yes.
You did?
I did. It was there.
I can't believe you were able to walk.
And it came out of me even faster. Now, keep in mind, I just drank this water. I don't know if it's possible for it to pass through my entire body to get into my bowels. It came out in a liquid state, just as dark and just as fast, projectile. Fortunately, it wasn't coming out the front end at the same time, because that would have been really a unique experience. I mean, maybe I wish it did. It would have been something to talk about. But then that was over just like that, and I was able to get my bucket, and I said, I'm ready, and she helped me back in, and I drank more water and more retching. I was able to breathe to get more come out, and the last retch that I had was bright fluorescent yellow-green. And as soon as it came out, I recognized it as bile. And Danny said, there it is.
Yeah.
And at one point, they flip the medicine on the burn marks because it's almost done absorbing that side, and they want to capture the other side. And it picks up again for a few more minutes, and then they knew when it was time, and they wipe it off. And I'm telling you, when they wipe that medicine off, it's amazing just how quickly
you rammed down.
Come right back down.
What was the timeline from that start to
I know the first time they put it on, they wanted the medicine to be on 10 minutes before they flipped it. I don't know if they left it on an additional 10 minutes on the flip. So maybe it was 20 minutes total, if that.
So you're on this ride, right? At any point are you like, man, I need to get out, or are you committed to?
I was committed to it. I don't know if I wanted to tap out. You mean like a tap out?
Here's the thing, and they call it the feminine container, right? Mm-hmm. They are there to guide you, and they're there for your safety. And so they clearly tell you, if it gets to a point where it is too much for you, put your hand up, make a noise, do whatever. We will remove it. And when they remove it, it's like this. Wow. I mean, we didn't tap, but essentially what it feels like is, you got the flu without the fever, right?
Sure.
And so right away when they put the frog wax in, it's just like, I'm sick, right?
Yeah, but even the skin sensations of having the fever, the flu, that's there, but you just don't have the temperature.
That's right.
You're right. Yeah.
Wow. And the body, depending on your body, it responds differently, right? The sweat that started coming out of my pores, my body was purging through the pores. Like my blanket was soaked.
Where's your mind at?
Shit, I have no idea, man. On that frog wax. Let me get this son of a bitch off of me. No, but, it took me to a place, it was difficult. Your mind, it's not psychotropic. It's not a mind thing other than you're struggling. You drink a lot of water, which is uncomfortable. But before it starts and then during in order to maximize the results, right? You're supposed to use breathing techniques and then drink more water, and it wasn't the easiest thing to do, but your body's going to purge. As long as that is on you, your body will purge, and that's exactly what it did. And for me, when it was over and they took it off, I laid down and I went to sleep for about 2 hours, right? I ended up getting up from there and then shifting over. I was incredibly cold, and then I shifted over and I had to take a nap. I mean, it just totally wiped me out.
Yeah. I'm tired listening to that experience. I'm right there.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in a swimming pool and you go under with the intent to try to hold your breath for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That was where my mind was. I knew this was only going to be a certain duration.
That's a great point.
Just hang in here, or the ice bath for me, right?
Yeah. And I'm the community pool champ at hold a breath.
You're going to be just fine in combo. And that was the combo experience, and that was day one. There was a really healthy meal. There was a lot of conversations, communication. There was them getting to know our story, them inquisitive of our story, but not asking. They waited for us to choose to share.
Yeah.
And they were so honored to hear, and they didn't even hear but a fraction of our stories. And they were just in awe.
Yeah.
And we always felt so honored by it. It was really beautiful.
It was, for somebody who has PTSD, right? Anything that's new, unpredictable, threatens the ego, a sense of control, is incredibly difficult. And so what they do a great job of is the connection from the time you step on the site to your family, right? You're part of the tribe, and it's a community, and it was incredible. Not only are they incredibly professional and trained and educated at what they do, not through textbook, but going and learning and living through tribal ceremonies to the 10th degree of what we went through in order to be certified or to be a true healer. So they have to go walk the walk many times over and then come back. But what they bring back to this, and especially I think what makes this place incredibly different, is they epitomize and the fundamental aspect of the feminine container, right? Because I will never forget that when Robert walked out right before the combo session, and he turns and he says, "The feminine container is now secure." That means our ceremony was not going to be interrupted, right? And it was us with them, and they were there for us. And that was absolutely incredible and comforting.
And that was very powerful for me. And again, they'd asked for a little bit about ourselves before we even arrived there. And I told them that my mother had passed away when I was 9 years old. I believe that resonated. I believe that they knew that's aligned with what was done so long ago tribally. Was this very much aligned with where Gary and I were, that we needed that nurturing. And I didn't need Robert or another man hovering over me. I needed somebody that was going to comfort me.
Heal that
like a mother can.
That's beautiful. Healing hand.
Yes.
Awesome. Talk to me about day 2, Joe.
Okay, so day 2, and this place has so many other physical alternatives that can be utilized, and they've got these people have such an education in fascia release, in physical, whether it be yoga or
breath work,
or meditation. I mean, there's so many things that have nothing to do with medicine that have a physical aspect of it too. That I won't go into a whole lot of that, but I'll talk about the psilocybin ceremony, which I think took place fairly early, around 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And again, you are fully educated up front as to what's going to happen. We were to expect about a 6-hour journey, and we were receiving 5 grams of psilocybin, which is the heroic dose. That's the one where you're going in. And long before this, I had told people, I said, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing meditation, I'm doing all these things, and they're wonderful. I feel so good. I feel the alignment, but it's only taking me to the water surface. There's some stuff under the water that I can't access. I've hidden it from myself, and I'm a firm believer the only thing that is going to let me look below the water surface is a psychedelic therapy.
Yeah, that's the unconscious.
And that was that, right? And so that was my intention going in, as afraid of it as I was seeing, because you don't know when you turn that light on, what are you going to find? And so it was very ceremonial again. We always bless the medicine. There is always a cleansing of sage, and it's just beautiful. I'm sure I'm gleaning over other things that they did, but the medicine was in a cacao mixture of, it tastes like chocolate, kind of a syrupy chocolate milkshake, and the psilocybin was in there, and ceremonial, it was blessed, and then we drank it. And then they had eye covers for us and a beautiful mat with blankets, and it was a one-on-one experience with our healers being right there with us. You're never alone. And there's music, and Danny led us into breath work to breathe through as the medicine begins to take effect. And then your eyes are either open or closed, and at one point I didn't know if my eyes were open or closed, but I began to see things, and it was just lights, and initially it was vibrancy of light, and then it was colors, and then it was three-dimensional. And how much do you want me to go into my experience? Do you want the story?
Yeah, I think hit the wave tops.
Okay, I'll give you my story. There were things that troubled me. There was, particularly with missing my mom, that 9-year-old boy that lost his mommy, and she was there. She was there. There was a lot of family members from a long time ago that were there. They're family members, and they were still dressed in their 1970s pastel polyester big collar stuff and all that, and my mom was there, and she told me in a sad voice, she says, "You don't need me anymore." Like a mom being a little bit of a martyr. She says, "You don't need me anymore." And I didn't say anything because I realized she was telling the truth. I recognized it as the truth. And I told her, I said, "I don't need you to love you." I said, "I'll always love you." And she looked at me, and she didn't need to say anything because she knew that was true. Yeah. And that was closure for my mom. That was it. Yeah. I thought my mom was going to be this big aspect of it, and that was it. And then I started to see people, but they're in the shadows. One of them was a very tall Egyptian woman with very long hair. And Danny, my healer, I had laid my book out, and I had asked her, I said, "If I tell you something, please write it down, because it's important. I need to remember it." And there was stuff that I'd ripped my mask off, and I wrote it down. It was scribbly, but I remembered what I wrote. It was important to me. And I saw this Egyptian woman, and I recognized, just knew in my mind that she was a healer from a long time ago. And there was a shaman off to my left, and he was a shaman healer, and he was ancient. And I remember telling her, I said, "This is old. This is so ancient." I said, "Danny, I come from a tribe from a long time ago. I'm their ancestor." And there was a warrior off to my right with the tribal tattoo markings and bones and sticks woven into his hair. And we were always constantly moving forward, and we were progressing. And I remember telling her, "It's the arrival. It's my arrival."
Yeah.
And as I was getting closer, there were these ancient tribal elders, and I knew that they were great men and women that everybody heralded as ancient knowledge and wisdom. And I didn't understand until that point that this was my judgment. I was here to be judged. And I knew that I had felt this intrinsic guilt for so long. Times that I failed my men, times that I said I tried as hard as I could, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I was lying to myself. Times when people got hurt, I should have done better. I could have done this. What if I'd have done that? Constantly knowing that I have failed in relationships. I've failed in marriages. I've failed my children. I've failed in so many ways. And this is it. I'm about to be sentenced. And I felt not physically naked, but I felt laid bare. I was weaponless. And I had the shaman on my left, and I had the warrior on my right, and all of these ancient elders. And at that moment, they all clapped. They all applauded. And they said, "You're unique. You are a warrior and a healer." And that's why I knew there was a shaman on my left and a warrior on my right. And they said, "You have work to do. You have much to do." And both the warrior and the shaman looked to me, and I was like, "Oh man, I'll just go wherever they tell me to go." And they both looked to me like, "Which way are we going? You're unique. You're the one. We're here for you. You tell us where to go." At that point, for the first time in my life, I knew who I was. I had been beating myself up for being the hippie Joe, had been beating myself up for being the warrior Joe, and the warrior Joe said, "We're a warrior. Leave that hippie stuff alone. What are you talking about?" I have always had incredible, powerful connection. I've been a passionate leader. I am an emotional person. My dad called it, "You're emotional. You could never be a Marine," not knowing that the emotional healer in me was what made me a great warrior.
Wow.
You know, and there were other things in that journey, other nuggets that I got out of it, and some of that's personal.
Yeah.
But that was the big part of what I got out of the psilocybin journey.
Incredible.
And it was real. I saw it. It was real. It wasn't like, oh, I had a dream. No, it was real.
No, it was absolutely real. And Joe, I'm not going to say it any better than you said it, man. That's an incredible way you just explained that, and it's incredible. I was in awe. I mean, right to be there with you, although I was going through it myself. But when it was all said and done, there were many moments. I'm just grateful, right?
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you were there. And for me, it was a critical piece. Right before we even started it with the combo session a day prior, they went around in a circle and they asked, "Who are you? Who are you?" Right? And each of them, including the healers, including the pastor, they would share who they thought they were, right? And so when they got to me, they were like, "Who are you?" And just being absolutely authentic and vulnerable, I said, "I don't know." And that's why I'm here. And I can tell you 2.5 hours into that psilocybin journey. And Joe, we got some of it on film, but there was a lot of things that were going on initially that scared me, right? My body was convulsing. There was a lot of energy coming out of my right side. My whole right side was contorting. My arm shook uncontrollably, and there were some complications that kind of led, to a bad experience. And that was just my mind playing games with me, with my arm. But it was because of the physical manifestations that came out as that trauma was being released, as I was addressing the trauma. And I say that, and to share a little nugget, one of the biggest things that happened in my experience is I went to the core of my index trauma with the dump truck that was driven into my building with C4. I sat in that truck and I drove it into my position. I saw me. I saw Josh. I saw Staff Sergeant LaCour. I saw Staff Sergeant Manton. I saw the other indigenous that were up there with us. But before I was able to sit in that truck, I had to sit with that gentleman personally. I spoke with him. We hugged each other. I met his family. I met his children. And I have nothing but respect for that guy for presenting himself. And as I drove that truck into that building, I did exactly what he did. He did everything he could. They executed well. We executed well. Lives were lost. we were both men who presented themselves on a battlefield. He felt that everything he did through every fiber of his being was the right decision, and so did his family. And in that experience, I sat with him, and there was nothing but respect for that person, even though he caused me an incredible amount of pain.
Yeah.
And so again, there was a lot of things that transpired, but at 2.5 hours, I sat up. I sat with the chief. I sat with the chief, a very ancient tribal experience. And after my meeting with him, I sat up and I said, I know who I am. And I stood up and I went and changed my clothes and I walked outside. I was still in the experience, but being someone that was born of the sun, being a Leo, I wanted to go feel the power of the sun. I sat with the chief. I stood up. I said, I know who I am. I thanked everybody for being in that room, and I went out and I sat in the sun. And Whitney comes with me, right? They never leave your side. Doesn't matter what you want to, they go with you. And it's such an incredible experience, such a profound experience. And it was absolutely amazing. This was in preparation for what would come the next day, right? And we had no idea what that was going to be, right? We saw the podcast. We listened to Mike Tyson talk about nobody F's with the Bofu frog, right? The Bufo. And so there was probably a lot of animosity and anxiety, right? With the whoop, the day I showed up with 21 being the highest possible strain.
You're running a marathon before you get there.
My day strain was 20.6, right? There are Olympic athletes that train 3 times a day.
That's right.
They don't get these results. I did not do any exercise, and I was at the highest strain that my body could possibly put forth from a physiological response. And it's all recorded. We have all the metrics.
Yeah.
And so this moved us into the 3rd day. And so I had a lot of animosity in the evening going into it. Because of, and I wasn't aware of what was going on with my right arm, but in that evening, my right arm started, it felt like it was swelling and it was tense and it was numb, and it created a lot of anxiety for me. And it made the ceremony and the next day difficult, and there were some very deliberate steps that had to be taken, like ice baths and things, for me to even say, okay, I'm ready. Joe went in the morning of, and I noticed that you wrote more that day than I've ever seen you. That morning you woke up, and from the time you woke up to right before you went into that ceremony, you were writing. And talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I think it took me a little bit of time to really grasp what this psilocybin journey was.
That's right.
And again, the intentional way that this was mapped out for us, the cleansing. And then the psilocybin, not knowing what to expect, I realized that was a journey deep within inside of me that gave me all the answers that I needed to go into the 3rd day. I needed to understand that, and I needed to forgive myself, which I did. I've been being exactly who I was made to be. What's in my DNA? These are my ancestors. This is what I was shown. I come from a long line of warriors and healers, and I've been being and doing everything that I was made to be, and I've been condemning myself for it. And meanwhile, the most amazing people that had ever existed are applauding me for a job well done. Okay. Put me in a very different mindset going into the 3rd day, which was the Bufo ceremony. That's the Bufo secretes the
Bufo toad.
I'm sorry, the Bufo toad. What did I say?
Bufo. I was just letting people know it's a toad. I was even calling it a Bufo frog. My son will correct me. Dad, there's a difference between a frog and a toad.
Yeah, and it's and it secretes a medicine, which is the 5-MeO-DMT. And I know there's a word to those acronyms, and don't get me to even try to tell you what it means. But it is a strong, one of the strongest hallucinogenic medicines that there are. And it is smoked. It's dried and it's smoked. And There were a lot of things that happened beforehand that I just felt with respect to preparation. I had been feeling this, like the Highlander, the quickening. They all were, for some reason, were compelled to go to this one spot where they were going to duke it out.
Yeah.
I felt that happening all around me, but it was ancestors. It was my family and my ancestors showing up. And I think I said, I feel like it's my wedding day and I'm the bride.
Yeah.
Could you feel those ancestors showing up before this ceremony? Like, could you feel their pull?
I did not feel ancestors before psilocybin. I met them in psilocybin. I felt my family before psilocybin. And before the 5-MeO-DMT or the Bufo ceremony, I felt the ancestors. And there were a lot of things that happened with animals. The night before, I had a disturbing dream before, I think it was before the psilocybin.
Yeah.
And an owl. I got up and I walked outside and there was an owl in the tree overhead. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I get into like spirit animals and stuff like that. In that, the owl, it tells you to discern. And I was like, wow. And I got up early the next morning before the 5-MeO-DMT, the Bufo ceremony, and the moon was about a quarter or less, a little bit more of a sliver, but it was turned in a way that it was a big smiley face in the sky. And I looked up and I just knew the universe is smiling at me. I was like, there's a big old smiley face, and this was my day. There were dogs and cats and squirrels, and I'm like, everybody's showing up. The cat never came up to me. He came up and let me pet him this time. It's like a big old tomcat. Yeah. And I said, okay. And all of that led me to feel like I am prepared. I was so scared. And I was honored by that because everything that brought me to this point required great courage to go into war, to go into battle, to do the things that I did. To heal from that could not just be a magic pill. It needed to require the same amount of courage going in. I was going outside the wire for the last time. The enemy within was me, and I was about to meet him. We smoked the fire. So it's ceremonial. I'm seated. There's music. There's cleansing. All the rituals are performed. The medicine is presented, and she starts it out with just a very small amount. And she lights it, cooks it. It smokes. I let all my air out. I breathe in deeply, and then we wait. And I start to feel the effects of the medicine. And it's like when you've been in a chlorine pool for too long and everything's kind of fuzzy and everything's real bright. That's how it began to manifest. But I felt that fuzziness in my body as well. And I let the medicine sink in. And she says, let me know when you're ready. And I looked up out a window and I saw the trees. And they were there. And it was time. Everything's ready. And I said, I'm ready. And at that point, I was ready to die because I knew that I was about to kill myself anyhow, so I might as well die trying. And that's okay. If this kills me, at least I went out fighting for me.
Yeah.
And she lit the medicine, and I drew in a deep inhale. And we had already seated myself so that when I laid back or fell back, that my head would be on the pillow. And I felt the medicine very quickly washing over me, and everything was kind of closing. There's a brightness, and I laid back, and I saw, and then here's where it gets hard to tell you. Everything got very bright, and there was a lot of communication before about you can't fight this medicine, but your instinct will be to fight. The harder you fight, the harder it will just be on you, but you won't win. The medicine will always win. I was ready to die. I was okay with that. But I was still telling myself, let go, let go, let go, let go. And it's like you're blasting off. And I felt myself falling upward faster, and it got brighter, and it was faster, and it was brighter. And then I felt myself reach a certain point where everything that was me was about to explode into a million pieces. But what was me was everything that I had surrounded myself with. My security blanket, my Marine face that I wear that makes everybody scared, all the different things that I do to convince everybody I'm okay, all the different ways that I surround, my PTSD, which I've assumed that identity over the course of the last 15 or 20 years. That's been me. I'm the Marine with PTSD. That's who I am. I was losing it, and I didn't know, what will I be? What will I be? What will be left if not that? That's me. And it exploded into a million pieces, and it just got quiet. And it was so bright, and it was quiet. You couldn't hear anything. And immediately I knew, and this is where those are things that I thought, and immediately I knew that security around me was not my security wall. It had been my prison.
Yeah.
For such a long time.
Yeah.
My prison walls exploded. And from that point, I knew who I was, what I was, how I had been hurting myself, and that it was over. There were things that transpired after that where I sat up and I was speaking. I deliberately spoke
to everyone
in the room and thanked them and told them how special they were and told them that the work that we have to do. And I remember holding myself and caressing my shoulder and saying, this is what I've always done, because it's always been just me. And I said, and that's okay. And I recall I recanted something that I learned in my psilocybin journey the previous day. I asked Annie to write it down, and she did. I said to her, please write this down. Forever alone, but never alone. And that's okay, because I am the warrior healer. That's why I have such relationship issues within myself, because my work is to be done alone. My work is me. I can have a relationship, but it can't be the stereotypical thing that society or culture, whatever, has mapped out. Whatever I have in a relationship with a significant other in this life will have to be different, because there's a part of me that has a work to do that can't be that way. And I looked at everybody and I said, forever alone, but never alone, and that's okay. And I caressed myself, and I was forgiving myself and letting go. I don't even really recall.
No, I think one of the biggest differences, the preparation you put into it the morning prior, allowed your body to absorb that medicine. That's what Whitney was saying too. She's like, I've never seen anyone just take it the way that you did, and it was there was simplicity and purity, but it wasn't like a violent experience.
So the letting go part for me, I remember being in a place where I was just holding my breath, and I remember thinking, I'm not breathing anymore. I'm not breathing anymore. I'm dying. If I don't breathe, I'm going to die. And that's when I went, I was back.
Yeah.
But when that ego exploded, that's what it was. That's what my walls were. It was my prison, but my prison was my ego, as everything that I made myself out to be. That was my death. That was the death of me. That was everything that I thought I was gone.
The death of the old you.
Yeah. And now it's like, I have a clean slate.
Yeah. And just to share a little bit with the audience, I was very reluctant. I didn't do a lot of the intentional work going into it. I think I carried my trauma a little differently. I think everybody does. Everybody's experience is different. Not to go into too much detail, because Joe, I think you just shared your experience. It was incredible. But I can tell you that mine was more like an exorcism. The only 2 points of my body that were touching were my heels and my head for a long period of time. I rewatching the video, my body has never made these sounds, right? And so if I was going to explain the experience, when the toad started taking me, it started extracting every negative aspect through every fiber of my being, from my toes to my head to my fingers, and I just felt everything just getting pulled into the center of my body. Just, I could feel it. My whole body was pulling to it, and then it started purging up, almost like through meditation when you lock your stomach in and you're pushing it up towards the pineal gland, right? This is everything that was happening. And it was incredibly scary, right? I started by saying, what Whitney tells you before you start: let go, let go. And when you go back and watch the video, you can hear me, I'm mumbling, I'm saying, let go, let go, let go, let go. And then when this thing grabs me, it just goes, let go, let go, let go. And it took me back, and my body got from a very low voice to a very high-pitched sound. And I'm telling you, what I was seeing was everything coming together in my body. And when it came together, it was the purity of that sound, and it was the high pitch. In my mouth, Whitney said my mouth could not get, Joe was there with me. I couldn't do it without him, but she said my mouth could not get any wider. My hands were laid out. I mean, it was, and we go back and watch the video. There was a point where Joe was trying to breathe for me just because I wasn't breathing for so long.
I was trying pretty hard too.
And it's here to go back and hear the commentation behind it. But I can tell you, when that thing finally released and my ego died and everything fell, I got to the point where everything was extracted, and then the first words out of my mouth, help me, help me. I just kept saying, help me, help me. And Whitney comes in and she starts whispering something in my ear. I have no idea what it was. And then my body released. And the first words out of my mouth was, you surrendered my soul. I wasn't talking to Whitney. My soul was surrendered. I have the chills right now, but I can't paint this picture any clearer. They gave me my soul back, and I knew it with 110% certainty. My soul was given back to me, clean. It did not have the distortions. It did not have the negative connotation. It did not. I said, you surrendered my soul. I was so ready to love, and that's what I said. I can't wait to love. I'm going to love my sons. I'm going to love my family. I'm going to love so much. And it is absolutely hard to explain. And so for anyone that might be watching this, everybody's path is different. Everybody's experience is different. I can tell you that the Atma tribe, with Whitney and Danny and Mateo and Robert and everyone that was involved, was the absolute experience that I needed to have, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And I mentioned that it had to be a certain way. It was everything and well beyond my every expectation. It was spiritual, ceremonial, ancient, tribal. It was medicine. It was real medicine, not pharmaceuticals. It was medicine.
And so here are the words that you're hearing, right? Which wasn't enough for me. If you can measure it, you can manage it. So thankfully for this guy, I went from an average 17 to 19 day strain where my heart rate stays between 140 to 160 beats per minute for a good part of the day for no reason. Today, my day strain is 4.5.
Wow.
The equality and the way that I slept and the way that my body is managing the sensory experiences coming through every single cortex is absolutely unbelievable. When we first got back yesterday, there was a dump truck and just dumped the load, and the gate fell, not far from here, and it just incredibly loud. We were underneath a pavilion, so it echoed, and yes, it did. It caught our attention, but there was no physical manifestation. The hair didn't stand up. The anger did not come in. The adrenaline did not flow. And Joe and I looked at each other. And we just started laughing. And we were like, are you serious? Are you serious? What's going on right now?
It would have hospitalized one of us, if not both of us. Like, our days would have been ruined.
Yeah.
We would have been done. I would have gone to the nearest bar and started drinking. And that's the other thing. I was drinking every night. 4, 6, 8 beers, whatever. We got back. We're at the airport, and Gary's like, "Hey, that bar's still open." Nah, I'm good.
That was awesome.
Got to the hotel. They had beers in the cooler that I could get and put on the room. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I even touched, and I have no desire. Right. And if I want to have a beer, I'll have a beer
on your terms.
But, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did not go into this with this intention.
And the fact that he sat here for the last 4 hours and did not have a single cigarette or a beer, or even urged or asked if we could take a break. I mean,
right.
That's
and
insane,
I didn't quit.
dude.
I haven't quit smoking, so I don't want anybody to think, "Oh my God, it's a." I did. That was not my intention to quit smoking. It is. I want it to happen.
But that wasn't
I had bigger.
Yeah.
I had bigger fish to fry in this.
That's right.
There was. If I could come away with one thing, I had to find out what was under the water surface and make peace with it. And not only did I find it and make peace with it, I discovered who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Here's something else that is worth mentioning. It absolutely reset my cannabis receptors, right? Because of the way my body was arched and the tension that was being put on that part of my body, my lower back was extremely sore. And so I don't take ibuprofen. I haven't taken ibuprofen or NSAIDs for the last 5 years. I've utilized cannabis for that. And so I consumed it in a way that I normally would, which is a heavy dose. Generally, I have a high tolerance. That's not the right answer.
You're back at in Georgia, or the first puff.
No, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. But here's the other thing. I woke up this morning. I took my blood pressure medication. My blood oxygen level started getting low because my blood pressure was low. My whole body has been reset. And so I'm telling you right now that I will, and I will keep the audience updated, I will rid myself of hypertension, of high blood pressure, of asthma, and being pre-diabetic. 100%. I will put my life on it. And it will not be a long time from now that I'm going to come back and I'm going to prove those results to you. Absolutely insane. So I would say that this is a clear demonstration that the path that we have walked in an effort to heal and the pharmaceutical strategy of the Western model is not the right answer.
Right.
And the path that we had just embarked upon absolutely is the right answer. And I want to thank everybody that was there at the Atma Tribe. I want to thank you, Joe, because I know in my DMT experience, before I could even consume, I turned to Joe and I said, buddy, I need you to take a ride with me. And he came and he held on to me.
Yeah.
And that was
such an honor.
That was absolutely incredible, Joe. And I want to thank you for being there, buddy. Love you, man.
You know how much I love you.
Yeah.
It was such an honor to be there, and for me to be able to be there for my own personal experiences would not have happened without you.
Yeah.
You sought me out. You brought me to the altar. I appreciate that. You saved my life.
Thank you, buddy.
You helped me save my life. I'm not sure which way it worked out, but yeah. That was it. Or maybe Whitney and Danny saved my life. I don't know. Somebody saved my life. It happened. But you brought me there.
It's we.
Yeah.
It's we. It's never you or I. It's we.
Mm.
That's it, buddy. And with that said, buddy, I think we'll call it a wrap. Joe, last words, man. Anything else?
I know that I have a clean slate and I have intentional work to do ahead of me from here on out. It's not like I just had a magic zap and I'm a new man, because the world is going to start trying to creep back in on me, and I need to do the intentional work. But I thank Atma because they've given me the tools and the reach back that are always there for me to help me to discover my new journey. And I look forward to it, and not only can I see beyond this Friday, I can see beyond everything.
Yeah.
Watch out, world.
Yeah. Yeah, here I come.
Watch out.
It's going to be good.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And that was, with that said, man, just recapping one of the memories right outside of that DMT experience. Watching a video, I turned and I looked at you and I said, Joe, what the are we doing? Let's go get them.
Yeah, we got work to do.
We got work to do. Let's go get them. And that is exactly what we do. So in time, hopefully the Atma Tribe and the Veterans Alliance for Holistic Alternatives can embrace the healing powers and the resources of each of these organizations, and create a pipeline and a pathway for many people, not just veterans, but not only to heal, but to provide a better life for those around them as well.